Hello and welcome to episode 18 of Miniatures Monthly.
We're back.
Hey! Also sorry.
Yeah, so sorry.
So sorry.
So sorry. We just got very busy for the summer months.
Yeah, I went into, I think maybe this is a story across the board, and I think maybe this is just happened to everybody, or maybe just everybody I know.
It feels that way to me.
But I entered the summer, apparently, what feels like a week ago, with loads of momentum and
Good
loads of energy. Yeah. As detailed in our Age of Sigmar special, finished my Zangor, and that was like having this, plug pulled out of me. And not the analogy I was thinking about when I kind of embarked on it, but it's where I've gone.
That's
so
an unpredictable finish.
That's where we live now. And all of this hobby gushed out.
And then suddenly there was none left.
And then I deflated like a saggy balloon, and then spent the rest of our initially very hot summer just sort of lying on my face.
Maybe the heat did it.
Yeah, maybe
that's it.
Well, I think so some combination of multiple holidays and just loads of work for some reason. It should be illegal in August, if you ask me.
Absolutely, especially with this heat. And I couldn't even spray in the hot some months. Like, you couldn't even go outside because it was going to dry in midair, and I was worried about ruining my models.
You're right, actually. That was the first thing that really slowed my roll with the big hobby roll I was on. Because actually, after that, maybe we'll get to it, but after the Zangor, I did Magister, 2 Chaos Spawn, all of my Azurite Ruins, sprayed loads of terrain, did some endless spells. So I was just doing stuff. The rest of my shame pile will be gone by the end of August. It's very much still there. In fact, it's got bigger. So, and then suddenly not being able to spray outside was like this. Okay, well, I guess I like computer games again now.
Yeah, that's really, it was a significant barrier actually, because I've gotten through most of my original Sacrosanct. They're all in some stage of undercoated or base coated and just ready to be finished off. But the moment I couldn't spray, I suddenly couldn't undercoat my war machines, the enormous crossbow war machines. And I've swapped my Death Guard half of the 40k box for my friend Chimp's Stormcast half of the AOS 2.0 core set. So I've got twice that double dose of those Sacrosanct Chamber models, and not being able to spray them means I just haven't been able to just get into them. And I can spray them at any moment now the weather's just
We're out of the habit.
But then, it's just hasn't occurred to me almost. It's weird.
It's like a mirroring, but obviously the same is true of podcasting. If it's too hot outside, the microphones they just
melt.
Well, they drip everywhere. It's weird.
It's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's why you can't.
It's hard life being a podcast.
That's why we haven't been able to do an episode for a month and a half.
It's been a while, and is it me or is it a Games Workshop just releasing? They're accelerating with the releases at a pace that surely can't be sustained.
Their hobby plug came all the way out,
that's true,
and it just won't stop gushing.
The gush is hot, just so much.
If it is possible to fully deflate them, that certainly hasn't occurred yet.
Yeah, it's been weird because it's been a very powerful news flow, but not a huge amount of AOS stuff. Lots of sort of bespoke boxed separate games and things like Adeptus Titanicus, things like Kill Team, Rogue Trader, lots of just independent boxes that you might be able to go out and buy and just enjoy in and of itself without having to collect an entire army. There's been
a lot, and I think, but at the same time I think there's been a sort of maybe a shortage of the things that we would traditionally consider big, capital B, big announcements, new factions, for example, or new armies. So we're going to kind of work through some of the new stuff, and basically just what's of interest to us from the kind of the world of miniatures things, because at this point, what's the point in trying to be topical? It's barely news when we discuss the heights of late July.
Plus, in traditional Minis Monthly form, as soon as we finish talking, we just announce something else that we've been talking about anyway.
Absolutely,
so might as well,
we're recording this at a slightly more unusual time in order to try and dodge their ability to announce things while we are literally recording the podcast, but we'll figure it out. But one thing actually that is happening this week, which is not GW related, which is super exciting, is X-Wing 2nd Edition's out on Thursday.
It's here already. It's snuck up on me completely. I knew it was sort of vaguely happening in the future, but no, it's right now.
Yeah.
I need to go out and buy it right now.
Well, but the good thing is you don't, because you're going on holiday for one thing.
That's true.
But also, I'm just going to be drowning in it, so you can come over and play it.
Yeah, look forward to that very much. Look forward to being excited about small plastic spaceships. And Chimp has acquired a Battlefleet Gothic fleet of Chaos ships, and he's got a fleet of Tyranid ships, and he's got some Corset stuff as well. So I'm going to be playing all the space games the next month or two.
They're good, Tom.
All the tabletop space games.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about X-Wing 2nd Edition, although I think one thing we'd like to do is some kind of probably X-Wing 2nd Edition special pod.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So we might save the in-depth discussion of the changes to the game for that. But obviously it's the game that X-Wing is the game that got me back into miniatures, so it'll always be very important to me. And I've been playing a little bit of 2nd Edition using computer game tools, and it's very good. It's top to bottom kind of what I would have wanted them to do to the game. And sort of, I think, Presages are kind of quite a substantial, because X-Wing was so big for Fantasy Flight, is kind of, initially maybe a couple of years ago, you wouldn't know what that bigness necessarily meant, in terms of what it would grow into.
Yeah.
And now they've kind of confirmed, stuff that I sort of got an inkling on when I was out there. But, it is becoming a game with 7 factions, which from previously 4, 5. It's becoming a game, previously 3 really, because it was really Rebels and Resistance, First Order and Empire, both as 2 combined factions, and Scum and Villainy.
Because you can run them together, can't you?
You used to be able to, yeah. Yeah. So you could have, Poe Dameron in a squad with Biggs from the first movie and that sort of thing. To becoming a game that has Rebels, Resistance, Imperials, First Order, Scum and Villainy, the Republic, and the droids from the prequels, which is a lot of stuff, and it'll be interesting to see how different it feels.
Yes, I'm looking forward to doing that special podcast, because we'll be able to combine your experience with my total noob impressions of it, really.
Well, that's the thing. It'll be interesting to do sort of, I'm really interested to see what you make of it, as somebody who didn't sort of burn in enough to burn out.
Yeah, I dabbled a little bit and kind of played it as a kind of a social game, when it is a very competitive game ultimately, and that seems to be the Star Wars fantasy is so strong and the models are really cool, and the stuff I love about it, it feels to be a bit like Shadespire, or even just sitting down to play a card game with someone. You're kind of there. You're there to try and win. Yeah,
it's inherently competitive, although I think sometimes that gets overstated by the core X-Wing community, if that makes sense. Anyway, that's maybe a discussion for another time. But
yeah, the core set looks really nice as well, and I love the new models and the posable X-Wings, which I think I've gushed about before. Just the idea of being able to set X-Wings S-foils to attack position.
Yeah,
that's like every game.
The wings now move, which is important in itself, but also
it is important.
Toggling S-foils in and out of attack position is now a game mechanic.
Yeah,
it became a game mechanic in the last wave for first edition,
right?
And it previously had been represented on things like the U-wing, and here's a good test of whether or not you're playing X-Wing against someone who will be your friend for life. And it's whether or not they insist, if possible, if it's a posable model, if they do or do not care enough to change the model every time they flip the card from one to the other.
How could you not?
Well, there are people who are like, it's just a visual thing, you don't have to change it every time. And it's like, yes, you do.
You really, really do.
And it's a game of, millimeters and very specific analog positioning. So fucking around with a model while it's on the board for no reason other than you have to. Along with doing the sound effects isn't maybe strictly even advisable, but you still have to do it. Well, it's mandatory.
Do you want to make Luke Skywalker sad?
We've all seen The Last Jedi, and the answer is no.
Exactly. So change the models, darn it.
Exactly. And you have to go when you do.
Yeah.
That's absolutely mandatory. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get to this, but that would, if they had done an Age of Sigmar style reinvention, they could have just written that into the rules from,
Very true.
Yeah. Anyway, that's good. That's happening. We'll definitely talk about that more at a later date. In terms of other announcements, I've got this in sort of no real order, because
we've forgotten the order.
We've forgotten. But in terms of AOS stuff, it was interesting. They did some teasers for some new endless spells and things, and that got people very excited about what it might be. And what it turned out to be was this Beasts of Chaos kind of relaunch, which is happening this weekend, I think, or the following weekend, which is the kind of the fixing of Beastmen, turning them into a more specific faction. At the moment, they are a bit like Skaven and a few other factions, like a lot of the Death factions pre-Legions of Nagash.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of different types of Goatman in different camps that can't really talk to each other, and now they will be able to. And they're also, all of the Zangor are in that.
Right.
Under a new set of allegiances.
That's cool. So similar rule set, but imagine with different kind
Yeah, so if you have a Zangor army, you could probably then declare it as a Beastman army
cool.
instead with different command abilities.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
I mean, if the project is to do Legions of Dungash for Chaos ultimately, and to kind of assemble all of the disparate elements of Chaos into something more coherent, that would be pretty sweet.
Yep.
That seems to be the way things are perhaps going.
I think Slates of Darkness probably need it eventually.
Yeah.
Although, so, that's cool. And and also it means some things like a proper start to collecting box and Age of Sigmar reboxings for those old Beastman kits, which are only on secular basis.
They don't really seem to need a remodel.
They're all right. Yeah.
And I don't know, I've never been very excited by the Beastman thing. I kind of slightly don't get it. I know some people in the Warhammer community love Beastman.
I like Beastman.
But yeah, I've never quite gotten the appeal of it really.
Well, it's just goat men, Tom.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's what I thought.
It's just a lot of pans.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of pans. There's pans all the way down.
Lots of horns.
Yeah.
And the occasional giant goat.
Yeah. Really big goat.
What are they called?
Gorgons. The Saigons and Gorgons. They're from the same kit.
Yeah, sweet.
Gorgons are the kind of combat ones, and Saigons, well, they're both combat ones, but and Saigons are the anti-wizard Minotaur Cyclopses.
So the only new model is the totem they have, the kind of...
and the Underspells.
Of course, yeah, and the Underspells. The scenery thing is quite cool and fits into what we've talked about before, about every faction kind of getting their own scenery in a way, and that's more parts of the game. That you not only do you get your own spell or an endless spells, you also get your own buildings almost that you bring with you to fights. It looks really neat.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I think, it's not going to, sort of usher me into Beastmen as a new direction for Chaos, but I think it sets a precedent for what an update might look like. So if they did for example, there are other areas of the range that kind of need this, Dwarven that aren't Carriage or Fire Slayers.
Yeah.
The Dispossessed. A lot of those kits are still really good.
Yeah.
The Iron Breakers and stuff are still cool. The Gyrocopters, all of that stuff. But, they're still reliant on General's Handbook allegiance abilities and things. And I can, maybe obviously Endless Spells isn't a great fit for them specifically, but I can imagine, a new book, maybe a new start collecting box, and maybe a new piece of terrain or something like that to kind of freshen them up is kind of an interesting precedent for updating armies.
Yeah, and Dwarven is a really good shout actually, because obviously I'd like to see it done for Wanderers and High Elves. They do have Swift Hawk agents and things like that. It feels as though GW have more plans for elves. There are going to be lots of different elf factions coming out.
And there's at least two.
Yeah, precisely. And so they're not going to need the same repackaging, because they're going to be basically redesigned. But stuff that isn't going to get that big refresh deserves to it's a good way to treat those models.
Yeah, particularly because I think it's notable that Beastmen have never really left the books, for example, even as they've sort of left the game. The other one that desperately needs it is Skaven.
Oh yeah.
Skaven, you don't need to redo all of those models. Lots of them are sort of end times era. They're perfectly all right.
Yeah.
But they're a mess rules wise.
Yeah, 100%.
You can still win tournaments with Skaven. It's because of a handful of, it's because of a few things. It's because of a handful of really, really good units, and also the fact that they are ultimately chaos. So, Archaon and some Storm Fiends is an army. A weird army, but it's an army.
Yeah.
So that's, but they're such a iconic, and I use that word and obviously throw up a little bit what I said, but they are, if you're going to talk about any Warhammer faction, there's in the upper echelons of the most Warhammer thing.
Yes.
I think I would maybe even make the case that Skaven are the most Warhammer
of all the factions. Yeah. Because there isn't a direct equivalent in Tolkien, for example. Or many other fictional fantasy universes. There's nothing quite like the Skaven I can really think of off the top of my head. So it really is a very, very Warhammer thing. The High Elves, they're just elves as you encounter them, tall, beautiful, smug. They're all those traits that we've just sort of baked into fantasy for some reason. Whereas the Skaven, they're really kind of contradictory and contrary, and they're not good guys, but they're not totally evil as well. They're just bickering and corrupted. And they've,
and they have been absolutely all over all of the books, right?
Sure.
They're everywhere. They're responsible for upsetting Nagash's latest Black Pyramid scheme.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. And I love that. Obviously anyone writing for Warhammer is going to love the Skaven, because if you like the setting, the Skaven are just so
Yeah.
they're always there. They are the omnipresent, just kind of cutting everyone.
I like that we've done a kind of reverse Warhammer here, in that ostensibly the subject is the new Beastmen stuff. And we've avoided talking about Beastmen in order to talk about Skaven, which is the reverse of how that would normally go in fiction.
That's very true. Yeah, Beastmen did it.
Beastmen did it, yeah. But yeah, so I really hope that's present. But the other thing I hope it's sort of reflecting is obviously the way Legions of Nagash happened, and a lot of Death fans were sort of like, oh, that's cool, it's a great book, but it's like, you know, we were hoping for new stuff rather than like a revamped set of old stuff. But then Nighthaunt came along a couple of months later. And like the rumors for what Dark Oath might be, that as a faction now, are so kind of well established. Yeah. Like there were rumor mongers saying that they had seen both the new Beastmen stuff and new Dark Oath stuff and Dark Oath as a faction and didn't know if it was one release or two releases. There were rumors for a while that there were going to be Beastmen in Dark Oath, but I wonder if that was because these two plans both exist.
Yeah. And you mean you'll be allying in lots of Beastmen, even presumably, they're not part of that.
Exactly. So, I love the Dark Oath models that they've already put out.
Yeah, they're awesome.
And the, apparently that range has been complete for ages, is the rumor I heard. Because so the rumor I specifically heard was that the Malign Portent's Heralds was among the final models done for each of the factions they represent.
Yeah.
So the Lord Ordinator was among the last of the Sacrosanct, or that range was done by the time that was done. And then Dark Oath War Queen, similar. Fungoid Cave Shaman, obviously everyone's expecting new goblins very, very soon.
Yeah.
And the Night of Shrouds, obviously Nighthaunt. So that is the incentive for me to try and finish off my siege, because I will switch over to Dark Oath.
Really excited about it, because it's going to be just a lot of ordinary humans, really, like marauders, and but in a kind of a grubbier and more, I'd expect, normal type of human warrior than, for example, the what are the Khorne warriors called? The
Blood Warriors.
The Blood Warriors are the armoured ones. What was that?
Blood Reavers.
Blood Reavers, yeah. Who are almost like a little bit overly ornate for the type of warrior they are.
Yeah, you've got...
they're Khorne, right?
Well, we care for skulls and blood, and we're cannibals, but there's no reason not to spend a lot of time on your blacksmith training. Because you've got to be able to work that beautiful filigree into stuff.
Absolutely. Whereas the Dark Oath, based on the couple of models we've seen of them from both the Silver Tower and the other release,
the War Queen,
the War Queen, like they are like almost, they could be in a Conan novel.
I mean that seems to be the guiding star, right?
Yeah.
Like it is. They are 100% like Frank Frazetta, fantasy covers and things, and
which
I think
would look. I can imagine a whole horde of them together looking amazing.
It's just like gym bunnies, just an entire army. The sweatiest, beefiest girls and boys. Yeah, I really like the War Queen model in terms of the sort of, I loved painting it and the attitude expressed and stuff. And I hope if that's reflected across the whole army as well, that'd be great from every point of view. I think, my kind of aim is to do a Realm of Shadow Dark Oath army. I think that's a kind of interesting kind of step sideways, because it goes with the board and bases I've already done to some extent. But I was thinking about whether or not the ones I've done already are meaningfully Realm of Metal, which is what I've done in the past, and I think I'd like to kind of take a slightly different tack with them, with the dark capes and stuff, and
nice.
It's kind of like the idea of
that'd look awesome. And it would be a change from painting brightly coloured Gribblemen.
Yeah, and I think that, like, something slightly more muted, I'm kind of looking forward to, and also, I mean, but I have no idea what they'll play like at all,
right?
Really, provided they actually even happen. But at this point, I've convinced myself they are to such an extent that I'll be baffled if they don't.
Yeah, I agree.
So the other sort of big, the other thing announced for AOS was Wrath and Rapture, Realm of Chaos, which is they didn't really confirm what it was. They showed a bit of art. The sort of the logical suggestion seems to be a kind of Blight War style box, which Games Workshop obviously like doing at the moment.
Yeah,
they just did one for Dune Stealer Sculpts and Space Wolves, Forge Bane earlier in the year. They like this format of like a few exclusive new models in a kind of 2 army starter kit kind of thing.
Yeah.
This one is set in the Realm of Chaos, and it is Khorne versus Slaanesh. And in the art, they show, obviously, demons that already exist, like Demonettes and Bloodletters, which I wouldn't expect to get new models, but also Fleshhounds and Beasts of Slaanesh, Fiends of Slaanesh, the Snoot Beasts.
Yeah, those things.
The sort of...
The weird anteater horses.
Yeah, anteater horses. monsters.
Yeah.
Not the anteater horses, they're seekers, I think. Striders. I mean, the ones that are like a scorpion crab anteater.
Ooh.
Again, really old, now fine cast model, very inefficient to get.
Yeah.
Similarly, Fleshhounds are among the best corn units, but they're only available in expensive resin at the moment.
Gotcha.
So, they did a plastic Fleshhound for Shadespire, which looked great.
Yeah.
So it seems very logical that there would be plastic Fleshhounds on the way.
That makes sense.
So I think that's probably what's going to be in that box.
It's going to be interesting to see Slanesh kind of reprinted, and it'd be really fascinating to see if they do a kind of Horticulus Slimux style, just one new model. Though that was a herald for an entire new range of Nurgle models.
Yes, it was.
That release. So maybe this will be similar in that respect.
I wouldn't. My hot prediction is, I reckon probably like if there was a hero for each side, probably either a new plastic Herald of Khorne on foot, but probably definitely a plastic Karanak, who is the two-headed Hound of Khorne. Oh, nice. Who's really cool in game, but again, it's one of those resin models. He basically is Khorne's dog that he sets on somebody, usually a wizard that he doesn't like, and then that dog will kill you eventually. Like, you might not know, maybe not now.
It will kill you.
Yeah, it will. You eventually are going to get
20 years
eaten by
time.
this two-headed dog. It'll just happen eventually. But in-game has a cool ability, like you set a target at the start of the game for Karanak, and then when Karanak gets within a certain radius, he spawns a unit of Fleshhounds around him, and now that something's free, it's just like...
That's pretty cool.
And suddenly dogs.
Yeah, that's nice.
But again, I wouldn't be surprised if there was any Fleshhound kit, if building Karanak out of it was a thing that it did.
Yeah.
And for Slanesh, the Mask of Slanesh has been in a few stories recently. And who is a demonette kind of herald character, a bit like the Changeling, but for Slanesh kind of thing.
Part human, part crab, as the demonettes are.
Yeah, exactly. Crabs, the sexiest crustacean.
Chaos.
Yeah.
Element.
Crab.
For some reason.
And so, I wouldn't be surprised to see that as well. I'm just guessing, Tom. I'm just guessing what it might be, but it seems to fit into the precedent of what's already been done, so.
As you say, Goblin's probably going to happen, given that we've seen the Fungoid Cave Shaman, was it?
Yep.
And that seems to be an interesting, I wonder, so the Silver Tower, you had goblins with many limbs, and it almost felt...
Scutlings, yeah.
Scutlings, as though the sort of spider inclinations of the goblins had kind of fused with the actual goblins themselves, which is another very, very AOS thing for things that were once separate to fuse together.
You become your brand is the theme of AOS.
Yeah, you physically merge with it and take a new form. So I wonder if you can see spider-like goblins with lots of arms and stuff, or maybe just spiders. I'm quite interested in seeing a new spider range for some reason.
Yeah. Those spider kits are still alright. I do wonder what they will change and update, whether they'll stick with the old.
Yeah, the trouble with the old spiders is they're built to sit in ranks, so they're all very narrow spiders, as though they're kind of sitting on a train.
They are long and thin.
Yeah. So they don't want to man spread out too much because they would disrupt the unit. Whereas an AOS spider rider would be could look crazy.
Yeah, if half of them aren't dangling off something or
exactly,
leaping over something or standing up. Well, the most AOS thing to do is each of them is standing on one tiny leg.
It's just spiders riding a larger spider, and some goblins are there too.
Yeah, though you've got to assemble web filament yourself. If they succeed in something like push fit web filament that if you breathe on it collapses.
Who knows what new technology?
Indeed. Thanks, CAD. But yeah, so that's the other kind of AOS adjacent thing that has happened or is happening is something I guess we saw coming, which is Night Vault. Warhammer Underworld's Night Vault. Basically a message to the community that we will force you to stop calling it Shadespire.
So we've had a Shady Spire, and now I've got a Nighty Vault.
A Nighty Vault, yeah. Well, those are the names of the iOS store mobile games associated with these properties. Nighty Vault and Shady Spire. So it seems like it is literally like a plot sequel as well as a follow-up to the game. So it's a new core set for Shadespire, but it's Shadespire Season 2. It doesn't replace, the old boards are still viable. It's a new set of boards, for one thing. The old boards are still viable, the old cards and warbands are all compatible, but it introduces a new mechanic, which is magic. It'll be interesting to see how that works. And the new core set factions, as predicted a long time ago when we were talking about prior to the Age of Sigmar 2nd edition announcement, is Sacrosanct and Nighthaunt. So it's a very sort of thorny Banshee and her little chain rasp mates.
It's the second. So the first the Sepulchral Guard were 7 strong undead. Now it's a new 7 strong undead faction that's going to behave very differently, and hopefully a little bit easier to use than the Sepulchral Guard. I'm terrible with. I still run them though.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of honour in sticking with one thing, even though you, as I know, my most recent Shadespire experience is a test. Even though you keep running into a brick wall.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how other factions interact with the magic system. I suspect, my guess would be that things like dispelling and stuff, it'd be logical to have cards interact with that in some way.
Yeah.
And as soon as you've added generic ploys and things to the game, then obviously it updates the game for everybody else as well.
Yeah, so. And they've done stuff like release a pack of hero cards that just sort of soft updates the game, and you could do that with Magic potentially. You just have like a pack of Magic cards that is multi-faction compatible
for the factions that would use them. Yeah. So I think it's interesting. But yeah, it's just I'm all for it. Like, I kind of feel a bit guilty that I didn't finish painting all my Shadespire warbands.
Same, yeah.
I like to kind of finish that up. But honestly, I've had such I haven't played Shadespire in ages.
No,
actually.
Same. Yeah, I've got a pack of the Vanguard Hunter faction. Yeah, and I just haven't even opened the cards to look through them. And those models are really cool. And
I really like them. Yeah.
They would slot directly into my army, obviously, because it's got loads of Vanguard Hunters already, and they also seem to be quite good. Yeah. Shooting is amazing in the game. So.
Yeah, they were the ones I was thinking of doing. Like, I can't really decide. Like, I've stuck with Blood Rivers at like all costs through thick and thin, basically, and then had obviously a disastrous time with them at the last tournament I did by building a bad deck. But I think I'm sort of compelled to stick with them. Although I probably would like to give Blood Warriors a try as well. But
they look really cool. Yeah, they're really cool. Good. I'm glad that it's not a total refresh. I didn't really ever think they would.
No,
just put everything into the
I saw that going around, people worrying about that, and I'm 90% sure. Like, it was in my head that this was going to happen, basically, as soon as Shadespire 1 came out. And I think it might simply be because at some point in the past, like whether it was on a stream or in White Dwarf or something like that, they said fairly explicitly that this was the plan, like a yearly core set.
I always felt like I knew. I don't know how I got that information.
But it's so much like card games. It's so much like where like, it goes through seasons and things. And, I wouldn't be surprised to see a situation where, for example, season 1 cards get banned in season 3, right? Like, which is kind of the Magic way of doing things, or a season's worth of cards get rotated out for a bit, which would be a really cool way of keeping the game fresh. So I'm kind of all for that, really.
Good.
Yeah. Speaking of, we're motoring through the old
bashing through the news.
Speaking of the Shadespire design team, Kill Team came out.
Yeah.
And is really good.
Someone I know owns the box.
Me.
Chris. Yeah, I was so impressed. You showed me the scenery yesterday.
Yeah.
And it looks fantastic.
That was a weird one, because so I haven't actually had a chance to play it myself yet, although I've been around people playing it and really like the look of it. And we're working on my warband, my Kill Team, as they say. It's not called warband, it's called Kill Team. But we get to we talk about what we've been up to hobby wise, but it's a really I think Kill Team really is the big release that we missed by missing an episode, if that makes sense, because obviously at this point our hot takes about it are at least a month late. But this is the sort of squad level sort of skirmish game for 40k, and I really like the rule set. I feel a bit sorry for both Shadow War Armageddon and myself.
Right.
Because Shadow War Armageddon was sent out as to deliver this. And people got very excited about it because it was kind of also the return of Necromunda in terms of the setup. Right before 8th edition 40k came out, and no one really wanted to play with adapted 7th edition rules anymore. Then Necromunda came out. Yeah. And now this is out. Yeah. It's I've never seen a game more
thoroughly stomped by
within a year. It's just nut. But when the dust settles, if I know Shadow War Armageddon core book is going to sit there on my shelf useless for forever now. This is, kind of what I wanted that to be. Yeah. cool rule set that learns good lessons from Age of Sigmar second edition, command points. Well, its use of command points feels more like AOS's than 40K's, because of how you get them, which I like. Smart rules that kind of rein in shooting and make it very dramatic. I'd like to play some with you so we can talk about this.
Yeah, I'd love to. I love the, there's quite a lot of individual personalities built into the rules as well, which is what I always loved about Mordheim, for example. And there's something that the Shadow War just kind of ignored. Your dudes were just part of a unit, and that was
I'm impressed by the amount of time they give to kind of like role playing in the book. Cool. Like, the core book gets a lot done because it has to introduce the game and all the scenarios and all the rules and all of the factions, at least at launch, and loads of these specializations that your specialist characters can level up into and all this stuff. But it still has time in each of those faction summaries to have tables for personalities, names, that kind of thing.
Nice.
Like the Space Marine one has like name tables for different chapters.
Oh wow.
So it's like
that's awesome.
Ultramarine names and Salamander names are different. So and that's a lot of like, it really encourages you to take the step of naming your characters. And I like that. Obviously I'm very pro that but like, for me it's like, I don't know whether this is a weird thing to say, but like, sometimes it's necessary to like destigmatize role playing a bit. It's a bit like you get into a nerdy environment, but people convince themselves it's not a nerdy fun environment by emphasizing just mechanics and play, right?
Yeah.
But I think naming your models is like quite a big part of Warhammer.
Yeah.
Along with painting them, like having a sense of who they are and investing in their personalities
and the horrible things that happen to them inevitably over the course of the campaign.
Exactly.
So in Kill Team, do they have rules for kind of consecutive campaigns, like consecutive game campaigns?
Yeah, so kind of it's good actually. So it's in the now defined format of open play, narrative play, match play, basically. And the way match play works, match play doesn't use the XP system, because but when you can assign specializations, but you just get the level 1 ability for all of them.
Okay.
If you play campaigns, then there's adds a resource system, and you can cash that in for upgrades and things.
Nice.
Not maybe to your gear. I'm not quite sure how that works. Partly because the faction I'm building doesn't have any gear upgrades because they're perfect already. But it means that you can level up your characters and things. And but one of the cool ways that kind of influences match play, one of the ideas I like is technically, obviously, it's 100 points is the limit for the team. But your roster is up to 20 units, and you'll never get 20 to 100 points. But the idea is you assemble your kill team for every game you play. So if you go to a tournament, you go with your roster of 20, and then you see your opponent. And I don't know exactly how you do this in terms of picking blind or whatever, but you assemble your kill team out of your roster, which is a neat way of doing it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting. So you got a sideboard, essentially.
Yeah, basically.
You can pick from.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, it's got some neat stuff. And it was interesting because when it came along, I was sort of very much on my, no more new models, really want to get through stuff, bent. And so my plan was at the time I was thinking that I might pick up, just a book and a box of Rubric Marines and do Thousand Suns, which would be an obvious choice for me. And then I decided that I kind of wanted to do something a little bit different. But also looking at the price of the rule book, a rule book and a box of Rubric Marines is basically just south of 50 quid. And the core set is 80. And for that 80, however, the terrain you get with it is kind of extraordinary.
Yeah.
The Skitarii and Genestealer Cults models I really like as models. I don't really have a particular plan for them yet, but actually through getting 2 separate boxes now, each of which for something that wasn't Skitarii but also happened to include Skitarii, I've ended up with an unassembled about 500 point Skitarii army.
Nice.
So
that's right.
Which will happen at some point, but
it's a great faction.
I just love the models. And they're just they feel like just perennially good models to have, so I wouldn't sell them on or anything, but the terrain, that's the kind of thing I want to talk about. So I had a bit of a big terrain building thing because it's just a fun thing to do. Sit in the conservatory of a morning and build cathedrals.
I find it far less stressful than doing models for some reason. I think maybe it's just the fear of getting plastic glue on some detail and having it just dissolve away. Whereas big old buildings, if they're a little bit sloppy, they're crumbling buildings, so it's fine. Yeah,
it is fine. And there's also, so recently I did some a Citadel Wood, which is a horrible kit.
Yeah.
I understand,
looks cool.
I understand now why you did yours without leaves.
Yeah.
Cause fuck the leaves. It's that horrible plastic that doesn't quite take plastic glue properly.
Yeah.
And your contact area is a slippery divot.
Yeah, the plastic itself and the quality of the sculpt seems to be far superior to the Age of Sigmar terrain that we have, which I do like and it looks really good once you painted it up, but it's a nightmare to use, really.
I suspect this stuff is manufactured in Nottingham,
right?
Because I know that a lot of the Chinese kits, the scenery kits are manufactured in China out of completely different plastics in a completely different process, and it shows. It's just a lot worse, unfortunately. But yeah, it's not just the quality of the kit either. It's like the planned modularity is like it's, because they are tougher kits to assemble than like the Azerite ruins for Age of Sigmar or the Riser pattern ruins for 40k, which are both very much like push fit, one and done.
Yeah.
Terrain in a box stuff. These are kits, right? They are model kits. They require a little bit more time. But, so I basically started saying this is like first set, but basically did these out based on the instructions in the book. Because I just to learn it. But as I was going, I started realizing like how much stuff you could build with them, and like I won't get around to this anytime soon. But now I kind of, if I ever, had a windfall of cash and just didn't know what to do with it, there's lots of things I probably would do with it. But I kind of want to build a cathedral now out of this stuff. It's that it looks so cool, and like I love diorama stuff like just so much, and it has all of that kind of, it's super exciting watching it come together. And something I've done with mine is not assemble anything but a single story. So even when it suggests putting like little sort of decorative column stubs in place on like the upper levels of ruined buildings and things, I'm not, because it means that you can take things that basically the entire set of stuff can be spread out as like scatter terrain or piled on top of each other to kind of create big multi-level buildings. And having a kit that easily does both with no glue required, because they kind of clip in together enough that unless you really can't stop flailing around like while you're playing, you're not going to knock it over. So it's I was really impressed by it. It's almost like worth the price of the box, to be honest. I mean, you get it would cost more than 80 quid to get all that stuff.
Especially given, they have released a lot of the terrain separately, I believe. You can get them.
They have,
various,
and the stuff that isn't in the box, obviously. Like
so they've also already released a bunch of expansions for it, or at least they're imminent. Which add new types of terrain derived from the other kits they have. So there's the weird kind of alien trees is one, like
from an alien
biome or whatever. And then they've also got the pipes, the kind of industrial,
the sector mechanica stuff.
The stuff.
I really like that kit as well.
The
other thing is because the game board that is included, like the fold out cardboard kind of play surface, is really high quality. I mean, what it is a high quality photograph of a well painted Realm of Battle board.
Right.
But that is a really clever thing to do for people who don't want to spend hundreds of pounds on Realm of Battle boards.
Yes.
So that sort of folds out, and the train is kind of designed to sort of almost like align with the street pattern on the board, and it's just like instantly looks good. It's like,
fantastic.
God, if this stuff had been around, like I've still got my Mordheim box and the cardboard and plastic train that came with that.
Yeah, gosh, I remember that.
I sound like the world's oldest man, but like the difference in the quality of a similar sort of thing separated by 20 years is kind of staggering.
It's amazing.
If we'd had plastic modular terrain kits from Mordheim, imagine if they brought back Mordheim with this production value.
Incredible. Imagine, I'd spend all the money.
God, I really want them to do that.
An AOS version of it, right? You could just have like Azerite palaces that have been erected by Stormcast, or you could have like Chaos Dens, like, you could have lots of different styles.
God, I really want that more than anything. Like, and also, like, I mean, we're not going to talk about it loads because I don't think either of us have loads to say about it, but there's a new Speed Freaks which is coming out, which is, an orc buggy racing game. That's close enough to Gorka Morka
that's
to
true.
be basically Gorka Morka. So
that's true.
surely this is the pattern. Necromunda's back, that's back. Battlefleet Gothic, somewhere.
They made noises
Epic's
about
back, which we'll get to.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, justice for Mordheim.
I get there's something very kind of old Warhammer about Mordheim, though.
There is,
It's in AOS has kind of moved on as a setting, and Mordheim is almost like the polar opposite to where AOS is going. Yeah, you could do it in the glorious palaces of Sigmar.
That doesn't make any sense.
No,
I don't know.
Really. It'd look rad though, wouldn't it? Imagine.
Yeah. Oh, they should still do it.
Yeah, it's true. I agree. I'm really, really looking forward to playing some Kill Team actually, because I've got a box of Skitarii, Vanguard / Hunters, whatever they're called. It's like a dual kit, and always wanted to kind of build them up and convert them and
Yeah.
put loads of attention into each one, and Kill Team is just perfect.
And the nice
for
thing
it.
about it with those dual kits is if you wanted to have a mixture of Vanguard and Rangers,
Yeah,
you can have a
precisely.
mixture of Vanguard.
Yeah,
Yeah, just plan it out, basically.
So
Like,
all I do is I'd definitely like plan it out, have a mix of those two, and then probably get some Sakari and Rust Stalkers, and then that would probably be quite a good Kill Team first.
yeah, I would strongly recommend either getting the book or, to be honest, you can borrow the book if you like, just because it's worth planning.
Yeah.
You know exactly
Your
what you're going
loadouts
to do.
and stuff like that.
Because like people, long-time listeners of the podcast might be wondering why I'm not doing a Harlequins kill team. Because I painted 3
Yeah, yeah.
Harlequins for Shadow War. And that's because I love Harlequins, and I was thinking about it, but Harlequins are the faction whose rules have changed the most from Shadow War to Kill Team. They've gone from being an extremely elite faction to being being costed basically aligned with everybody else. More of, not a horde thing, but like far more models, but also they're kind of, this is something that annoys me a little bit, but like, cause most of the time the equipment options you've got in Kill Team in terms of how you can, equip your various things is calibrated sort of based on what's in the infantry box, basically. That's not the case for Harlequins.
Right.
There are weapons in the Harlequin set that you can't use in Kill Team, like power swords and stuff. And I unfortunately used only those things.
Oh, no.
So the 3 models that I've done are completely kind of unusable unless I do counts as. And if I do counts as, then kind of what's the point? Because like it's Kill Team.
Yeah.
It should be, if there was ever a game where you were going to really, represent every aspect of that model's equipment on their being, then that's
is
the
all
one. So
half a dozen models.
So, and it was to the point where I wouldn't even be able to make a valid Kill Team out of what was left in the box. I'd have to buy a new box of Harlequins. And if I'm doing that, it's like, so I'm doing Necrons instead.
Hooray.
Hooray. So maybe we can move on to talking about the hobby side of that in a moment, because there are 2 other bits of news I want to get through while we catch up. But it's interesting to like talk about where we stand with things. One's Adeptus Titanicus, which is out now.
It is out, and it looks cool, but they're expensive.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit yesterday when we played the game that we will get to in the battle report in a bit. But yes, you're right, it is pricey. I think it came out within a couple of weeks or a month of Kill Team, and I think given what I was just saying about like the feeling of completeness for Kill Team from that box, I think that's something that at least the big box for AT didn't have. I think it was 175 quid, which is just a lot.
Is it kind of Forge World and GW? Just kind of,
No, it's not. It's GW. It's the same as Necromunda in that it's sort of shared by the 2. I think like Forge World will do sort of bonus kits, but the main stuff is GW plastic.
And it feels as though for a full maniple or whatever they're called, you do need like 2 or 3 Titans probably, and then loads of smaller things. And each one of those Titans is £65, and they're really cool models, but they're not like huge. I don't quite understand why they are that price, compared to a lot of other comparable GW kits.
Yeah, it's interesting how expensive it is in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, there's an old argument that pricing of GW kits is sometimes based on how many of them you're likely to buy. So that's why a lot of hero models are like 22 quid.
Yeah.
Because it's probably the only one you will ever buy.
Purchase, yeah.
Like, but yeah, like I was so excited about it, and I still am actually, but like I think it arrived at a time where I'd suddenly become a bit more cautious about big investments in GW games or any kinds of games like this, because I was sort of aware of how many games I realistically play, and I didn't want to buy in and not ever really play it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Although I do love the theme and desperately would love to get into it eventually. One thing that sort of sits to the side of this though is it's done really well by all accounts. It's sold out everywhere. And just anecdotally, like it's all over both my miniatures Instagram and all of the sort of Bristol area wargaming sort of groups I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Which suggests that, it's like, that was my big worry for it, that it becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy where it's expensive so it doesn't sell, so no one's playing it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sell, and then it dies, which I really don't want for it. But I think it's one of those things where, like, maybe next year I think there's going to be another printing of the big box, and that might be a time where it's like, this is the time to get into it. If there's an existing scene, for example.
I love the models, and as you say, the fantasy is amazing, and I love even the sort of cardboard kind of interfaces you have for each Titan. You kind of moving tokens around to control-based systems. Something very tactile and satisfying about that.
Yeah.
I'd love to, play a couple of games just to see what it's like. But yeah, you're right. For me, it'd take a lot to invest in it, I think.
Yes, I think particularly because it's a big, for me, it would be a big or against something else a bit further down the line, like Dark Earth, for example, or something like that, both in terms of money and hobby time. Although they are really lovely kits. Like, I mean, talking about, modelers kits, basically, like, I think one of the things you're paying for with those is just the number of options and the posability and the fact that...
That's true.
Like,
that's true.
Even just subtle things, like they've started designing for magnets. So they're putting, spaces for neodymium magnets on the models now.
That's really cool, actually. That's really, really good, actually.
Yeah, I'd love to see them roll that attitude out, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Final thing I wanted to mention kind of briefly, because it happened and we've never mentioned that it even exists, is because it's been a busy couple of months, basically last week before, the Middle-earth battle game got what is functionally its second edition.
Right.
And given that the first edition came out like 15, 16 years ago, that's kind of a big thing. And so the originals of Lord of the Rings battle game that Games Workshop did came out after I kind of moved away from Warhammer as a teenager.
Yeah.
So it's one of the biggest things they've ever done. And I was talking to manager of our local GW about like kind of why it's coming back. I was sort of expecting it to fade out right in the middle of the stuff. But apparently the reason for it is that, or one of the reasons which is interesting, is that GW kind of understand that that their audience does go away from between the ages of like 16 and 30 and then they come back again.
Yeah.
And right now, the generation of people who were playing Warhammer as teenagers when Lord of the Rings came out, for whom it is their Warhammer, are now coming back into the hobby, and there's a lot of interest in sort of picking it up again.
Yeah.
And actually, like, I'll probably get over this, but I did have the kind of like, oh, this is interesting. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the rule system is, I don't want to go too deep in it, but actually I was like, just watched a few games being played and I really appreciate that it's a little bit more grounded and realistic. It's more like a historical in some ways than AOS is. Time consuming, but like very different actually in terms of how it resolves even how fighting works. Every model fights individually. There are no units. And it's based on who that model is near.
Yeah.
So that kind of particular kind of granularity of like, this orc is fighting this person and that is that fight. It's not this block of dice is weighing up its casualties against this block of dice, etc. Similarly, like a ranged combat system where, occlusion is a cover save isn't like a one-up on your save. It's rolling to see if you hit all of the things between the shooter and the target, including walls, other combats, that kind of thing. So there's a lot more kind of dynamic emergent potential in the rules. Like, if you paint almost every model with a horse comes with not on a horse model, because you can be knocked off your horse. Oh, well. And then you become a foot soldier.
That's really
that's for every kind of cavalry in the game. Which
is more of a simulation.
Yeah, that kind of simulationist thing. Yeah. And it's just sort of like, and there's something about the fact that like, because the models are quite a bit smaller, because they're actually 28 mil scale rather than 40, rather than Warhammer, like, where like we have stretched the definition of 28, and you can't stretch the definition of a measurement, Tom. It doesn't make sense.
And yet, here we are.
All of that stuff. One thing that struck me is actually like the sense of scale's a little bit greater. Like I didn't realize, because the size of the tables you play on hasn't really changed, but as Warhammer models have just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The
space looks smaller. Yeah,
the space looks smaller, and so a big huge pack of Riders of Rohan or something moving around actually looks kind of army-like. And that's that was just, it's a very subjective thing, but it made me realize that like as a kid I had this impression of Warhammer games being massive, like unattainably massive, more models than you could ever afford or paint. And obviously, as I got bigger, the tables seemed smaller, but also the models got bigger. So Warhammer's just seemed more and more manageable over time, because it's like, I'm bigger, they're bigger. Like,
yeah, I know what you mean.
But actually, like, so yeah, I am sort of tempted by it, actually.
Interesting.
Partly because it scales really well, so it plays really well with small model counts, but like, I'm gonna try a demo game and see how I feel.
Interesting.
Part of me just really wants to paint some Saxons, by which I mean Rohirrim, but what I mean is
what's in the
Saxons.
What are the factions?
The core set is called Battle of Penelor Fields, which is the battle outside Minas Tirith. Yeah, so it's something like a dozen Riders of Rohan, a dozen Warriors of Rohan, which is partly so that you've got the foot versions of the Riders of Rohan. Theoden on horse and Sans horse, and horse go wrong mode. 20 of those ghosts, the good ghosts.
Ones that come out the crack.
Yeah, good ghosts what come from the crack. That's the translation of the Elvish. Like 20 odd, maybe even 30 orcs, a troll, and the Witch King of Angmar on the fell beast, dragony serpenty thing.
That's quite good.
And
quite good set.
That set is responsible for me having the phrase "Witch King of Angmar, Dis King of Angmar" stuck in my head for a week and a half. Thank you. Everyone else can have that now.
Spread like a virus now.
But yeah, so I know it's a bit sort of left field to be like, and also Lord of the Rings was there, but like it's been sat in like, you know, GW's kind of back catalogue for ages, and I just never really even considered it seriously.
It's always been there, and I always sort of associated it with the films.
Yeah, it is very much based on it's the film version of Tolkien.
Yeah, and so when the films stopped and, you know, became the Hobbit films, which weren't amazing.
Yeah.
Then, like, I assumed it would just fade away and go away. Isn't there a Lord of the Rings television series in production?
I think there is, yeah.
So I wonder if, like, it's kind of hanging around to catch that wave again.
Well, I wonder if, so I think for me it's like, because yeah, like I was the perfect age to be completely wowed by Lord of the Rings as movies, and that original trilogy of movies I think are great. You know, overlong, but so the books, you know what I mean? They're kind of like this great big, you know,
quite fitting.
Like, you know, I think they're so important to like what would subsequently happen with fantasy storytelling on screen, right? There's no Game of Thrones without those movies. But they're so tremendously undermined by the Hobbit movies for me that it's sort of, this reminds me of, there was a period in my life where I didn't give a shit about Star Wars. It was a narrow period of my life, but it took place because the prequels ruined it so much.
Right.
And like, I still loved the original movies, but I kind of just moved on from it for a while. And then years later kind of came back to it with X-Wing, and then the new movies came out and I liked them, and then there was good stuff again, you know, and it was sort of happening again. And then I realized how much I, you know, reconnected with something that I loved. And Lord of the Rings is definitely in that middle period for me now, where it's like, you know, the book, I loved the books as a kid. So, you know, it'd been a part of my life for a long time, and the movies were amazing. And then it became bad and over milked and kind of whatever. But as low fantasy, you know, we're talking about how much we love that Age of Sigmar is doing to kind of distance fantasy from Tolkien, reinventing those old tropes. So it's not just heroes and dwarves, etc.
Yeah.
But there's still something appealing about those old tropes. And if you're kind of not going to get them from the Warhammer Old World, why not kind of go to the source?
Go to the source, yeah. Go to the OG, kind of medieval fantasy, rural fantasy kind of aesthetic. That's interesting.
So I'm a little bit tempted.
It's a skirmish game, isn't it? It's like a rank game.
It's a skirmish game, yeah. So there's a round basis. In fact, its movement and kind of coherence rules are far looser than AOS. It's like, because all of your models move individually, they can go wherever the fuck they want.
Oh, right.
Like I think it's, I'm still very much a novice, so I might annoy people who know the game better by trying to explain it like this. But essentially, from watching it, it's like you have leaders and each leader you recruit into your army gives you the ability to add other models to your army.
Right.
So, I don't know, Theoden can take 12 other models with him, and you pick what they are. But they then don't have to stay with him in the game, or even really with each other. You buy the models individually, so you don't have a unit of riders or
okay.
But there are a lot of, like, buffs and things, so there's a lot of reasons to want to be near a hero. So, like, an interesting mechanic which I saw sort of used in interesting ways is your heroes have like stocks of particular stats, basically. And those stats are kind of like command points in a way, but they're specific to heroes. So imagine if each of your heroes in AOS had its own stock of command points.
Right.
And that was it for the game. There's no way of getting more. It's, that's it for the game. So one thing you can do is like AOS sort of roll for priority, variable priority. But if you lose priority, you can declare like a heroic move where if you desperately want to move first and then you lose the roll off, you can choose a hero to declare priority, to declare a kind of heroic move for every model near him.
Okay.
And then they get to move first.
Yeah.
Unless your opponent matches your bid, basically.
Gotcha.
And wrests initiative back. And that seems very reactive and kind of interesting.
Neat.
So yeah, neat. And I was
How much is the new box?
It's 80 quid. It's the standard kind of core set kind of thing. But it comes with the, the rule book and like 80 models or something. So it's, cool. Not a terrible value. But like, I've got enough to be getting on with, I think. But it's, I think anyone who's into these games will recognise the feeling of like going like, oh no, I want this for about a week.
I know exactly what you mean.
And so, yeah, that's where I've been at.
Oh, cool.
And that's literally all the news, Tom. Well, it's not all the news, but it's all the news
Way
we're
more,
talking
but
about.
for now, I like, what do we think the news is going to look like in the coming month or two? What's imminent?
I
guess it's more Kill Team, isn't it?
Yeah, so there's Kill Team Rogue Trader, which we sort of failed to talk about.
True.
That's super interesting looking. Beautiful models will probably not get the box because don't really want any of them. They're just nice.
Yeah. Lovely Doberman.
Lovely Doberman.
Space Doberman.
Good Doberman. 10 out of 10. So I guess, because there's a big, there's the Beasts of Chaos stuff, and then there's Orktober. So I imagine it'll be a lot of orcs. And Nightvault must be out soon.
Yeah, in the coming month, I'd assume.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So I guess that's kind of going to be it. I mean, you never know what they're going at. I'm hoping that there's rumours of like Black Legion for Christmas and things. So Abaddon. But a better model.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He deserves
a better model. A better model.
He really needs one. Bless that old model.
Yeah.
It's cool. But
mini Abaddon and his big hand.
The smallest man.
But yeah, I do not know. Like, I think maybe it'd be, in order to segue into what we're planning, I'd be really happy for a kind of quiet couple of months of stuff I don't want. And some clarity on what's coming so that I can basically clear out existing shame pile and move into a new shame pile with intent. How about you?
I think that's very similar. I've got loads of Sacrosanct to paint, and then I'll use this Guitaria, I think, as a way to break it up, and I'll eventually end up with quite a large Sacrosanct army. So I'm putting off buying any of the big new heroes. I'd quite like to get the Aventus Firestrike model, which is the Lord on Taurolon. Taurolon is just like a kind of giant angry dog with big wings. And that's cool. The Dracoline models are cool as well, just kind of giant angry cats with wizards on them. So yeah, I'm going to get a bunch of those eventually, but not imminently at all, because I just want to get through the second core set's worth of stuff I have now, which is going to take quite a while, I think. Yeah,
it must be kind of a weird situation to be in with Stormcast, because you finished your shame pile, which I'm very jealous of, but I have the thing of like, when I finish all of the Zinch models I want, which is not too far off now, I can legit expect that there aren't going to be new Zinch models probably for years, right? I had the update. So that's done, right?
You're never done with Stormcast.
No.
It's going to keep on.
It's a subscription service to Gold Men.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And in a year's time, I expect there'll be another chamber and more heroes and stuff, and I'll probably still buy them.
Yeah.
But that's what you know what you're getting into when you invest in the poster boy kind of faction for a given game system.
Yeah.
You know it's going to be supported, and you're always going to get new stuff, which is part of the fun of it. It's like Chaos. There's always going to be new Chaos stuff of some description.
That's the nice thing, is having this Grand Alliance I can go back to, everything kind of works together.
Yeah, precisely. And I'd love to see some destruction. So I think some new Moon Clan would be awesome for the game.
Yeah, that maybe is the missing link for, maybe, like, there's a tendency, I think, in recent times at GW for releases across 40k and AOS to somewhat mirror each other, like Space Marine Legions, Chaos Space Marine Legions, in particular demon factions into Mortals. So maybe something like October into Grotvember.
That'd be fun. It'd be nice to see. It feels like the most underserved Grand Alliance by a long way now that Death's had a load of new stuff. So yeah, give us some destruction. Give us a tasty little bit of destruction in Games Workshop. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, exciting. Let's talk about our month, kind of sporadic as it has been in hobby month stuff. What have you been up to, Tom? I haven't done a huge amount. I've mostly just been finishing my Sequitors, which was mostly a matter of pinning down the colour scheme I wanted to do, and then just very machine-like going through the purple bits. Yeah. They look really good. I really like them. Thank you. Yeah. I like the army's gotten darker, like literally. Yes, it has. Yeah. So yeah, the kind of the underskirt, the kind of robes underneath, I've done in almost like black leather. So they look a bit heavier, and they look a little bit more imposing. The silhouette's quite imposing when you paint that black. And you tend to see them painted with a lot of white robes and kind of paladin-like. But I wanted something a little bit different from a lot of the other Secretaries I've seen on Instagram and stuff like that. So I went with black and purple and gold. And purple and gold is just a guaranteed nice fit. It looks great. Yeah, it really does. So yeah, they were really fun to paint. I love those models as well. I think they're absolutely spot on for the fantasy of what the Stormcast should look and feel like. That mix of just kind of paladin and also there's something quite workmanlike about
like
them.
blacksmith.
Yeah, exactly. Because they've got, instead of normal hammers, they've got like the Stormsmite mauls, I think they're called.
Yeah.
A very kind of odd.
It's an anvil on a stick.
Exactly right. Yeah, and so that they look like workmanlike in a way. They're there to just do a job, and they're like professionals.
Yeah, ghosts. They're like, I was going to say they were like plumbers that are designed to kill ghosts. But what I've just described as the Ghostbusters.
Yeah, they're pretty close, to be honest. They're pretty. One of the primes you can build has like an actual Ghostbuster trap, which she's holding there, and she's just sucking the soul out of a corpse. And it's very much like you might as well give them the old Ghostbuster backpacks at this point. But yeah, they're awesome. I just need to paint the general up and then start running the Sacrosanct as an actual Sacrosanct army, and start exploring the synergies between the wizards and the evocators as well, which I'm doing. They're almost like Disney characters, the way I've painted them, because they've got like bright red robes, because I really want them to stand out from the rest of the rank and file. So the Secretors and the new crossbow dudes are going to be black and gold and purple, and the evocators are going to be these like bright red. You know, you're not going to forget where they are. Yeah. And ostentatious, and kind of runes glowing in their robes and stuff like that. I want to.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I want to go to.
I really like how you have managed to get like lots of other colours into Hammers of Sigmar without it. Well, it's still, I think it's identifiable as a Hammers of Sigmar army.
Yes, and that's. You don't want to break the army by getting away from the core gold and blue thing. Yeah. Because if I started to paint them completely differently, it would look like I've got a few different armies. So the gold and blue is always consistent. That's always on there. But gold and blue is quite sort of neutral in a way. You can put lots of different colours with it and it looks fine, and it doesn't actually break the cohesion. So yeah, it's looking quite nice at the moment. Yeah, they're good. I still love painting Stormcast. I've still got my Night Haunts as well, and I'm really looking forward to doing something very different with them. So I like looking at Instagram just to sort of see what not to do, in a way. The loads of stuff that looks amazing. Yeah. But it also looks almost, I want to be less predictable with my painting and with my colour choices. And I want to sort of break out of the, almost the Games Workshop pots in a way, and start to mix colours, start to think of weird colour combinations that you don't see elsewhere, which means there are going to be some disastrous models that are just going to look horrendous, but I've going to accept that and just paint my Grimghast Reapers, the normal kind of rank and file of the Night Haunt that you get in the core box, and try some just really weird shit with them, and just use them as kind of test models for techniques and things, and might accidentally come out with a good idea for something. Yeah, it's a cool idea. I really want to do, for example, instead of just like doing the ghostly bits of their hands and their faces white and then washing it or whatever, I want to actually paint them silver and then use washes over silver to create a kind of a sense of internal glow, almost if the light reflecting off the model will create a sort of, maybe this is the experiment, create a kind of, what's the word for it? Just an odd effect, like almost like a
weird looking,
but kind of glowy and kind of a strange texture, and washes over silver dulls the silver as well. And I wonder if you stack them up, you can actually get a sort of just very subtly reflective surface that's almost like subsurface skin scattering type effect. So yeah, we're going to experiment with all that with my Night Haunt. It's a painting project.
Yeah, awesome.
How about yourself? You've been painting some Necrons.
Yeah, I've been painting Necrons. Speaking of ghosts.
Speaking of silver.
And speaking of metal ghosts.
Yeah, maybe I'll just paint my Night Haunt as Necrons.
Yeah, exactly. I actually saw an amazing Flayed One conversion, which was putting Necron heads on Grimghast Reapers. And and having the energy effect be more like they're kind of phasing in and out of reality rather than they're literally ghosts. Which is a nice idea.
That's a cool idea.
So yeah, I painted quite a lot since we last recorded an episode, but that's more to do with the fact that we, remember recording an episode for a long time. So the Necrons I've been working on, I'm kind of hoping to have done by the end of this week, although I might put some work in progress photos into the show notes. So I think I may have mentioned this on the little interstitial kind of apology episode I did, but so I might reiterate some stuff. But basically, a little while ago, I had one of those feelings that you have for about a week where you really get into sort of an idea, and I actually followed through on this one. So I started picking up some Necron stuff because they were just coming out, they were just getting a codex, and I really like their new models specifically, but there's also a lot about Necrons generally that I really like.
They've changed a lot over the years, haven't they?
Yeah, they're very different to, I think they're probably among the 40k things that have changed the most, because they've been there have been Necrons for as long as they've been 40k, but they used to be Chaos Androids, then they became these kind of like sort of unthinking automata in service to the Catan, and now now they have a much different relationship with the Catan, and a little bit of a sad case of nominative determinism in some ways. They were a race called the Necron tier. Now they're metal skeletons.
Yeah.
Who knew? But yeah, and I liked a lot about the new fiction, and I tend to be drawn towards like esoteric factions. I think it comes from enjoying that kind of like cosmic horror generally. Like the thing that appeals to me about Tzeentch is that cosmic horror element, and Necrons have it as well from a slightly different angle. Like, and so I like all of that stuff about them. And so I actually have like a not insubstantial amount of Necrons waiting to be built. And partly it was also because when this happened, I was deep in Zangor mania, and I was like, what is the opposite of this that I'm doing?
Yeah.
And so I am putting together a Necron kill team first, and they are designed to ultimately fit into a Necron army. Like I want to do a Necron army for 40k.
Yeah.
Like I'll end up with just a few weird little conversions in and among them. But actually, you know, Necrons kind of support that. Like you can have the odd sort of different looking Necron, even though they're all basically, you know, transplanted souls and minds within robot frames. You can have some creative leeway. So I've been working on this kill team, which is the notion of a little story beat from the book that I really liked, which is a punishment detail, a group of Necrons that have been sanctioned by their overlord for whatever reason. And the sort of backstory I've come up with for this is that, so the dynasty I'm doing for all of the Necrons is the Mephit dynasty, which is just because I like the colour scheme. They are kind of like, they bind stars and build weapons of mass destruction out of stars.
Oh, cool.
So instead of the green Gorse energy that almost all Necrons have, they have solar energy in their weapons. So they have glowing orange weapons rather than green. But with green paneling on their armour, like camo green. And there's something about that colour scheme that I really like.
Yeah, I really like it.
And so, and among their kind of details, one of them is that most sort of Necron dynasties have a pharaon, like a pharaoh, basically a space pharaoh, a leader. But the Mephit are different because their pharaon was destroyed by the Eldar while it was still asleep, which is rude. But that's something the Eldar have spent millions of years doing, is finding Necrons and killing them before they can wake up again. And so they're currently leaderless. And there is a sort of an official kind of pretender to the throne of the pharaon in the fiction, but I'd like my entire army to be based around the court of a different kind of pretender to the throne kind of thing. And so I like the idea of within that a group of sort of Necron immortals who are slightly more conscious than their peers, the Necron warriors, that wake up but still follow the old pharaon. Like they don't really agree that they're gone. Like, you know, they refuse to go with this kind of, you know, court sort of drama, but also go a bit wrong themselves, and they form the core of a team that's basically been sanctioned and is now sent down to various conflicts around the galaxy to kind of do the capricious aims of their Necron overlord. And so I've done a leader who's got maybe like a little kind of, it'll be like a kind of little superheated metal cape, I think. It's kind of a weird idea. I don't know if it works. I'm painting it a few different ways. And I've given him a hat, basically. Like
even Necrons can wear a trilby.
He can wear a hat. Well, all a Flayed one is a Necron in a hat. It's just that the hat is someone else's skin.
Okay. Lovely.
Because, well, this is the thing. There's precedent within the fiction for Necrons that go wrong to start collecting stuff. It's a weird thing they do. Like Flayed ones are just Necrons that go a bit wrong and start collecting body parts. Like trying to build new bodies on top of their metal bodies and things. Like it's a horror thing.
It's pretty twisted. That's good.
And so he's the leader, and he has the a trait, one of the kind of personality quirks where it's basically flesh eater courts, like fundamentally believes himself to be still fighting the old war. You know, wouldn't really believe that he's a Necron. I did, and I've done probably the most substantial conversion, or most substantial kit bash really, is the comms guy who collects radios. I think I talked about this, but like I'm trying to express what the fuck does a Necron comms person look like, and because you know the technology's so strange. But I just like the fact that he collects radios. And there's an ability deeper in the comms specialist tree, which is Vox Ghost, which means that you can kind of screw with your opponent's team. Cool. And I kind of like the idea that he goes through the pack and picks out whatever radio is most appropriate, or skull, or whatever is most appropriate to the team that he's facing, and then just honks into that, basically.
Fantastic.
Like, I'm a human on the radio to say boo.
That sounds great. He looks awesome as well.
So they're coming along, and I think I've managed to kind of differentiate them. So I used like the faceplate from a Canoptek Stalker, which is like the kind of like snake beast, as a basically like sniper shield for one of the death marks. So it looks more like because there's 2 death marks. One of them's a scout, one of them's a sniper. It's kind of figuring out one of them's got like a sort of ocular shield on the sniper rifle, and the other one's got basically like a robot tentacle with a big eye on the end growing out of his shoulder, and that's the scout. That's built out of the tailbone of a Necron Immortal and another bit of something. A Tryout Praetorian, actually. And the idea with him is that he's not actually done anything wrong, but he's like the eye of the Overlord. So he has this other sort of eye on him, basically, that is there to kind of like relay information back to the command. And his job is probably to kill all the others if they go more rogue. But yeah, it's kind of like that idea.
That's cool.
Necron A-Team, basically.
Yeah, nice. They look awesome. I like the dark metal as well.
Yeah.
I'm used to them just seeing dry brushed, really. So it's cool to see them a little bit different.
Yeah, they are dry brushed, but like then there's a little bit of highlights, and then and the nice thing about painting them is obviously you spray them metal and then you block in the other colours, and then they're kind of done.
Yeah.
But also it means that like edge highlighting becomes pretty important on the other things and stuff. So I've been practicing like edge highlighting black, which is just a skill that's worth having because it's not easy.
Yeah.
And making it look neat and that kind of thing. So that's been fun, and hopefully I'll have them done this week. Also, basing with cork has been a good
cool
thing to build up, and worth it for Kill Team, because these 7 are going to be
they're going to be it.
The basing scheme is actually like, I tend to not overdo bases, but like I worry too much about having lots of different colours, and I've done it much simpler. They're basically just grey, but I tried to match the tone and kind of dustiness of the future hellscape from the beginning of Terminator.
Oh yeah.
So, which just feels very Necron to me.
Yeah, absolutely, it is.
Because I mean, what are Necrons if not some people in the late 80s going, can we have Terminators in this?
As an army? Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
So that was so that's almost done now, and that'll be nice to finish up and start playing with. I have no idea how good they are in Kill Team, but
they tend to be quite good, don't they, Necrons?
Yeah, they have an interesting ability, which is they're a little bit harder to kill, because in Kill Team, when you take a wound, that would normally remove a model in 40k, you roll a dice, and on a 4 up, they're dead, and on a 1 to 3, they take a flesh wound instead. And then every time you take lethal damage after that, you add the number of flesh wounds that you've taken to the roll.
Right.
So the more flesh wounds you take, if you get lucky and manage to take 3 flesh wounds before taking any other kind of damage, the next one will probably kill you. Right? That's the idea.
As a cumulative.
Yeah. Whereas Necrons, if a damage roll is a 6, which would normally kill you, they gain all their health back, lose all their flesh wounds, and they're fine. So they have they have like a 1 in 3 chance of dying, rather than a 1 in 2, basically, which is kind of...
They've always been tough. They used to be absurdly tough, if I recall, in earlier editions.
They're still tough in 40k. They come back to life in 40k.
Nice.
Reanimation protocols. But yeah, I think maybe I have gotten them confused with Calculon. But I don't know if that's a crime. I don't think
that. That's cool.
So that's exciting. I'm trying to think. Painted a bunch of terrain really quickly. I discovered that mixing Ardcoat into your washes for terrain makes it go real nice. That's a thing I did.
Does it make them glossy?
No. So I found this from the Warhammer community, the Warhammer World sort of diorama painting team. There's a feature on like White Dwarf last year where they talk about painting loads of it quickly.
Right.
And their kind of like magic mix for terrain is like, I think it's 50%. I think it's a sort of 3-way mix of Agrax Earthshade, Seraphim Sepia, and Ardcoat. And I made myself a little pot of this in an old pot of Seraphim Sepia, or it's like I just remember exactly what the proportions are. I'll look it up. But it's a really good tone, actually, because it kind of goes over any colour and just weathers it, basically.
Cool.
It's the colour of all buildings that you don't realise. Everything in the world is a little bit yellowy brown because of the colour of light, basically, and dust. And the colour things tend to go when they get a bit old. So I did my Azerite Ruins super quickly by just base coating them, essentially grey and blue, and then soaking them in this stuff, and then dry brushing them. And it was like done. Because it's like, you wouldn't recommend this, like you were saying earlier, I wouldn't recommend this for models where you worry about all the little details, but with terrain, you just kind of want the effect And I think the key for terrain for me and not worrying about doing it too quickly is like, you do need to have at least 3 colours on it.
Yeah.
For some reason 2 looks monotone, and even though it's actually 2 duotone, but you know, you get 3 colours and then wash it with whatever, and it can be the same wash because it's just, you know, it's just the brightness and contrast Photoshop filter. It's the Instagram filter, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, that wash is essentially just a kind of sepia Instagram filter that you just
makes sense.
gob all over your terrain, and then it's like, oh, that looks good now.
Nice.
Then dry brush it an off beige colour, probably a bone or powder witch flesh, because the magic GW paints where it's just like a little winky beige, and suddenly it's like, wow, that's the best thing I've ever seen.
You can see all the detail.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
And yeah, really nice and easy. So that was fun. Did a load of washes over white from a Chaos Spawn. They're very much a different way of painting.
That's really cool.
Chaos Spawn are real weird. Painted a Curseling. Talked about that on the interim episode. Almost broke me, but he's done now.
Yeah. Full fine cast. So would you ever paint another fine cast model?
I'm going to do 1 a year.
Okay, that's the limit.
Yeah, it's like, well, so I'm never going to do a fine cast model that resin Forge World's fine. I'll never do a fine cast model that has smooth armor that isn't some kind of Gribble Man. If it's a kind of Gribble Man, which is my favorite Queen song, then that's fine. But if it is like, I don't know, like a Necron, for example, no,
Too much filing.
No, too much filing. Because if you ever want it to be smooth, it will never be, you know what I mean? It's like, you can't ever get it. It's like, it's almost like tragically unattainable, the perfection you would like from fine cast. It's like a trap for perfectionists.
Thank goodness for Plastic A.
Yeah. Yeah, like getting back to assembling plastic and painting plastic models is just like,
nice day.
Holy shit. Like, particularly because even the Necrons were stressful because I was like doing little conversions and things. It's just not my strong suit. Like, I have to kind of accept that. Like, I'm all right at playing, but I lose most of my games. I'm all right at painting, and I'm happy with my painting, but my converting, it's just not what I don't really enjoy it. It turns out.
Yeah.
And I'm not very good at it. So I might just not.
I guess only for 6 models you get to.
It's like you stick
it's worth
it out.
that. It's worth that effort.
Well, I think the thing I definitely found is like all models go through it. Oh, this looks fucking rubbish.
Yeah, definitely.
With conversions, welcome to that.
For a long
where it's just like, this just looks. I've just broken this. Then there is a magic step with converting when you spray them.
Yeah,
and it's like,
they look like the same thing now.
And then it looks like all of this shit I just piled onto an expensive model now looks like it was supposed to be there. Before it, I just made a mess quietly in my little desk, and then felt ashamed.
Fantastic. That's exciting though. I love the idea of skirmish games where you put loads of effort into just a few individuals and sort of naming them. I've always loved that.
And then they die.
And you write songs for them.
Yeah.
So
that's the good thing about the Necrons is they can come back. I don't know where they'll find, like, he has to find a new bag of radios before every session, but that's fine. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a quiet month for both of us, or month and a half, 2 months, you might say. But we are back on the horse now. So actually, that's a question before we move on to the battle report. Do you feel the momentum coming back?
Not yet, because I haven't had a chance to sit down and get painting again and kind of unfold all my painting stuff and reset up my paint station, and off on holiday for a few weeks, so it's going to be a while before I get back. But I'm really keen to get back to it, and then presumably momentum will inevitably follow.
Yeah. Also, you're allowed to take a break because it's not your job.
Yeah, that's very true.
And even you're allowed to take breaks from your job, it turns out.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
But we nonetheless have at least started playing again. So that's a thing. So now let's seamlessly transition to the battle report that we actually recorded yesterday.
We've just played a big long game of Warhammer Age of Sigmar.
It felt like I had to relearn the game from scratch, Chris.
Yeah, because I imagine we're doing that thing again, listener, so you know, where we record this bit first and then record the rest of the podcast so that we can record the battle report while we still know what happened.
Yeah.
But that does mean that we probably already have said that we've both been away from Warhammer and adjacent things for a little while. And coming back to it, forgot how it do in quite a substantial way.
Many rules missed, occasionally entire phases. Not quite, but things like large things that,
I mean,
but I think we did a good job of sort of rowing back and helping each other just sort of
figure it out
and letting each other's armies do what they're supposed to do, really. Which I think is in the spirit of the game.
Yes. And also, like, despite that, like, I thought this was one of the A, most interesting, and B, most sort of, and B, and maybe even get to C, B, most sort of like cinematic in some ways, like had some pretty cool moments, and C, kind of one of the, most sort of, entertaining games that we've had, I think, in terms of.
I think it was like, I felt like the armies were super well balanced.
Yeah.
Against each other. And we've talked in the past about the sort of, the specifics of the Stormcast Siege matchup and the sort of problems that can create in terms of pacing and in terms of how both armies are using systems that don't necessarily interact with one another very often. Whereas the armies we both brought today were quite infantry heavy, lots of just troops on the table, running around, doing fights. And that, there's lots of magic as well, lots of stuff going on, but I felt like it was just a very balanced, game.
And it was one of those scenarios where, it was a game all the way through to the very end of the game.
It was, yeah.
Which, even though, while still having moments where big power swings from one side to the other. Whereas I think, the games that can be less entertaining are the ones where a sort of early advantage just slowly snowballs for one side.
Sure.
And it doesn't turn. Whereas this one really did feel like it had.
Yeah. And
moments.
I thought it was, especially because, single objective scenarios in Age of Sigmar can lead to quite bad games. And this, so we played a scenario from the Malign source.
We played Eye of the Storm.
That's right. So, one army channels a ritual and it's the other one's job to get into the center and by the end of the game have a certain number of units in there to try and win or draw or lose.
Yeah. So the fictional setup here is that we're following on directly from the previous game we played, the first game in our new kind of Age of Sigmar 2nd edition campaign. I like the idea that winning and losing in these scenarios isn't so much like you get a big bonus in the next one if you won, so much as it just affects what you're doing in the next scenario. So we played Eye of the Storm, which is a malign portent scenario where, as Tom says, one team is channeling a spell and the other has to which occupies a 24-inch sort of diameter circle in the middle of the board. And the other, player has to just be in that circle at the end of the game. It's really no more complicated than that. Yeah. There's no kind of who has more units or anything like that. It's just be in this massive circle. But you also get to deploy the kind of invader, the attacker gets to deploy at both ends of the table as well, which is kind of interesting. So you're sort of sandwiched in the middle of the board.
Absolutely.
The sort of, the fictional kind of, point here is that having claimed a very special orb by winning the first game, this is sort of granted the power necessary for my Gaunt Summoner and his allies, of which some are new, to sort of re-summon the Silver Tower back into this sort of the Warp Flame Peaks, this part of the Realm of Metal where our campaign previously took place. And this particular ritual is taking place in the ruins of Fort Tantris, a sort of watchtower fortress built by your storm host in the aftermath of our previous campaign, many hundreds of years ago at this point, to kind of watch over the kind of blasted, magic-ridden wasteland left in that campaign's wake.
Absolutely.
Not good things have happened to Fort Tantris. It's fallen apart a little bit.
Yeah.
In part thanks to my new general, who is a Curseling, the model I spent a month sort of laboring over, who is both of the agents of the Order of Vizier sent to guard and maintain Fort Tantris, who have now, something's gone terribly wrong, Tom, and they've been fused into one body and now serve a much better master, Tzeentch, as a kind of fused, occasionally useless, magic flinging, Siamese wizard beast.
I like the idea that, after our first campaign, the Fort Tantris was built. And that's the point where the Castellant kind of took over, because that's what Castellants are for, and the Stormcast army, they're there to maintain these fortresses. But bit by bit, with like the Necroquake, and so on, a lot of the defensive forces have been moved to other parts of the realms by Sigmar, and Tzeentch took its opportunity, and Tzeentch just never left this realm, never left this particular part of the realm. And it's seeping back in. And now they're trying to perform the coup de grace, which is to summon the Silver Tower and then maybe rip in reality and bring through the demon forces.
Indeed. The demon forces who were kind of there last time, but never mind. There's always some demons. That's the way it works.
Yes.
And so the other new character, my Magister that I painted, Chaos Spawn summoning wizard dude, who is I refer to him as the postulant. So, a sort of a student of, my Chaos Sorcerer Lord, now your Castellan. A bit of his, he likes his first album. He's not big on the second album.
I love it. He looks so cretinous.
Yeah.
There's something about his kind of hunched pose and there's something sneaky about him that is a great model. It's awesome.
Yeah, so as a kind of lieutenant with the Gaunt Summoner and the Curseling, but a pretty potent wizard in his own right, as we'll find out. So my forces were kind of built out of that with a block of 30 Zangor, because why not? We were playing 1500 points matched play, pretty much. But with, very different forces. Do you want to talk through who the Stormcast sent to challenge this ritual?
Yeah, sure. So I decided to go for quite an infantry heavy army, knowing that numbers and units were going to matter. So I had a big old unit of Sequitors, which are the new Sacrosanct Chamber infantry, who are absolutely, I love everything about them, from the models, from, the way you can paint them, all the way down to their rules, which are excellent. They're just a really solid and robust battle line unit. And they just get a lot more done than Liberators ever did before. So it's nice because Liberators kind of, were always just worse than Judicators in many respects. You'd just take Judicators instead of Liberators. You'd always take the Archers over the Stoic Warriors, which is always kind of a shame because the Liberators are supposed to be
very central to that fantasy,
core
right?
fantasy of the Stormcast, right? And you just saw them less and less and less. But now this new battle line unit is absolutely really potent, and it's just great to have some melee foot infantry running around doing stuff. And that's just for me the essence of one of the things I find really fun about war games is just moving units around and bashing them into each other. So yes, they took a unit of 9 of them, and the reason why I took 9 and not 10 is because you get bizarre numbers of Sequitors in the core box, and it's very hard to actually make up an optimal unit without spending a lot of money, which feels perhaps intentional.
I suspect with that, I think I may have said this in our Role Models Discord a while ago, but I suspect that the contents of that box and the layout of those sprues were decided a long time before the rules for those units were established.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, particularly because the leaflet that comes inside the box has everything pointed completely differently, and all of the units are, you take, the new crossbow people in 3s, according to the leaflet, the kind of rules leaflet that comes with the core set. And that's, I think you take them in 6s or something. Like, all the numbers are different to how they're pointed now and how they're balanced. So it does feel like there's that, the whole Sacrosanct Chamber got redesigned at some point between the inception of the core box and the current release.
It's a bit of an aside, but I wonder if they know how many people buy like a Warhammer starter set and never buy anything else. And that part of it is just like, we'll build a board game out of what's in these boxes, and then everything else, if you choose to expand them out and play, AOS more broadly, then good for you, but we don't build it for you necessarily. I wonder if that's a fact.
Yeah, it's a good point actually, because surely you want the people who have maybe split a box or, they invite their friends over, just have a good game with what's in the box alone, isolated from the rest of the sort of the meta and everything else. You want that box to provide a good contest. And even though I loved the Warhammer 40,000 re-release, I think the actual in rules terms and the type of games that evolved from the forces that were in the box, you ended up with quite poor games simply because the Primaris are there to stand and shoot, and the Death Guard are there just to slowly march forward and resist being shot. And you only get some very limited games out of that type of setup with the models included. So I do think actually the AOS 2.0 box probably does give a more interesting game, just because Nighthaunt is fast and interesting, and the Stormcast included has some magic and stuff, so there's a lot of kind of counterplay there. But yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe it's just about delivering a self-contained game in a box.
Anyway, an auspicious number of Sequitors.
Yep, good. I'll get to the end of my army list eventually. So Sequitors, 2 units of Judicators, always take 2 units of Judicators, they're brilliant. They're my archers, and what else do I have? I had, my general was a Lord Aquila, and that was basically so I could take 2 units of Vanguard Hunters, who I still can't quite figure out how to use. And they always seem like such an interesting unit. They could do a lot of different things, but none of them terribly well. But I just love the models as well. So
they're great.
I always run them.
I thought it was a really nice looking army because of the sort of balance of just interesting kind of profiles and shapes, just like a really cool kind of diverse set of Stormcast.
Yeah, and it was
Fulminators as well.
Fulminators as well, of course. And also I had Dr. Doots is back. The Heraldor was there to lend moral support and occasionally to honk the shit out of a piece of architecture.
Just to honk bricks into Zangor's faces.
Yes. I think that's it.
Yeah, I think it is it. So my full army was, to clarify, the, Magister, Gaunt Summoner, Curseling, block of 30 Zangor, and two units of 2 units of 10 Pink Horrors, and then in terms of endless spells, the Bellwind Vortex, the Geminids, the Pendulum, and the Shackles.
Yeah.
Of which I didn't use the Shackles, but I used everything else.
Yeah, which I thought was awesome because we actually had a game where we saw a lot of endless spells and they actually mattered.
Yeah.
And
that's partly because one of the conceits of the scenario is that while I'm inside that central channeling zone, I get +2 to cast endless spells, which is quite a big deal. So that was, encouraged the use of them, but also they played an important role in the game, and they were, I think, a big factor in the game feeling as entertaining as it was, and that Magic was as participatory as it was.
Yeah, and it really makes a huge difference being able to see the Magic on the tabletop. Like, I love that, I understand why spells have to be dice rolls often, but it's so great just to see a giant, big, stupid scythe. Yeah. Cutting through.
The same is true of my Magister's spell, which is just D3 mortal wounds, but because it creates a chaos spawn, it has sort of a bit, again, it's almost it's not that there's a spell effect model, but you get, it gives you a very visceral sense of what happened.
Yeah. I love spells that change the board state.
Yeah.
And the problem with just a lot of direct mortal wound spells, and I don't mind them really, but they don't change the board state beyond just damaging a thing.
Well, if only to mark a year and a half of me complaining about the Duke Man. One of my weaknesses, I think, of the Duke Man is that, the fantasy is he blows a building up and everyone gets hurt, but the reality is you don't remove the terrain piece.
Right.
And if you remove the terrain piece, I'd be like, all right, because it becomes a one-off.
Yeah.
With other kind of strategic ramifications.
Maybe we could house rule that though. I think that's a good change.
Yeah.
Because I agree. The image that creates is really cool as well.
Because it turns any given terrain piece into a kind of a damage amp. Right.
Endlessly exploding wood.
Yeah, exactly.
It is bizarre. I agree. But yeah, it was really good. A really good mix of magic and shooting and combat in this game. And, it felt like a really good game of Warhammer.
Yeah. So, to start with the start, we actually did have some great terrain rolls. Talk about terrain. We had basically, 5 pointed, 5 points, 1 in the center, 4 in the corners, and the terrain didn't end up being a huge factor, but we had just on dice rolls, a damned chaos ruin and some inspiring henges. But a really crucial one for me is the sort of the dais in the center of the board that I was sort of establishing as the channeling spot, got arcane just on a roll, which means it was +1 to cast.
Yeah.
Which means that I was basically spending most of the game sat on +1 to cast, which is very, very nice for me.
And also totally fitting though.
Yeah, it felt really right. It was big font of magic kind of thing.
And imagine if that had been mystical or something that would potentially
deadly.
Yeah, deadly, right. And you'd had to just stand near it all the time.
Yeah, we keep falling in this hole.
But yeah, no, it was perfect. And it's totally fit into the story we'd built around this scenario as well.
So, my Destiny roll wasn't too much to write home about, apart from the fact I didn't have any wands. Me not having any wands is sort of momentarily important.
That's a big deal. As, anyone's just listened to the pod before knows, bringing back, Pink Horrors, when they roll Battle Shock, if they roll a 1, they get to bring back, is it D6, Chris?
D6, yeah.
Yeah. And so you can guarantee that with, your Destiny dice. And, knowing that you didn't have wands changed how I played the game, which is the interesting part of the counterplay that exists between our factions.
Well, it's that's often my, I remember being quite surprised when I went to one of the bigger tournaments I've been to and hearing people say that Destiny dice was a mechanic that ruined the game, because it's completely broken. And I don't really get that about it. Because one, it's very random, but also it's transparent to both players what dice rolls are available. Yeah. If that makes sense.
I think maybe that attitude comes from the fact that when they were initially implemented, they could be used for damage rolls and stuff like
mortal wound rolls. Yeah. They can be used for damage rolls, but not for mortal wound. Yeah.
So there were a lot of kind of exploits that felt very.
I wonder if it's simpler than that. I wonder if it's simply that people maybe don't process what goes into creating a dice result until the dice result is in front of them. Right. I see this in a lot of games. You see this in X-Wing all the time. Yeah. If someone has, in X-Wing, every token in the world and all the defensive actions in the world and then survives, it's oh my god, your dice are insane. And it's well, a lot built up to this point. And the same is true of Destiny dice. If you save a crucial character by using all of your Destiny 6s at once, that might feel bullshit to your opponent, but you've been spending the entire game not using those 6s, and then you'll spend the rest of the game not using those 6s. So
it's an interesting bit of sort of game psychology, isn't it? It feels like cheating when you rolled those dice 90 minutes ago.
Exactly. Which is almost why the mechanic is perfect. Because it is like, I always had this. You know what I mean? It's very Zinchi. Like, I really like it.
But anyway. I think as an opponent, and obviously played Zinch often, you work around it, right? Like, you know what they've got and what they can do with it. Maybe it feels bad if you don't know what they can do with it very well. And, but still, I'm just fine with it.
Anyway, so this is a rare example of a game where I finished deploying first, because now that everything I have is so expensive.
Lock a Zangor as well. That always helps.
Trying to fit them in a 24-inch circle.
Yeah.
There was I suppose there's not much to say about deployment other than I had a bit of a sort of game of wanting to put the Zangor on the same side as the Fulminators, but you could just keep putting things in space or in pursuit.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about Stormcast, actually.
Yeah.
You do. There's only so much you can put in space. Like, for everything you put in space, you have to put something down.
Yeah.
But having hunters who can go into pursuit isn't the same, I don't think.
No, I don't think it is.
So yeah, I was able to, you can sort of hold off on putting anything down onto the table and watch what your opponent's doing. I basically, decided to put each of my units of Judicators on opposite sides of the board. So if one side got crushed, there would still be shooting happening.
Yeah.
And just ambient shooting, which is what you just needed to be constantly trying to put out shooting damage. And that was kind of the core I built off. I put the 2 units of Vanguard Hunters in pursuit, and I put my general in, space. And they, as a kind of Vanguard strike force that could lurk and
or do what your Vanguard always do, which is show up really late.
We're here, everyone.
It's it's already at they get a good mileage in there, kind of the cavalry's here, everybody. But sometimes, do you not think the rest of your army might like the cavalry to be there at the beginning?
And the general, right? I don't think there's a rule that says the general has to be on the table.
I don't think so. No, it's fine rules-wise. It's
just an odd image, isn't it? I guess everyone's got their orders before they go down.
I felt very much obviously, because as you set up, Judicators on each side, but then everything else, all your Secretors and the Fulminators and the Heraldor ended up on the other side. So it was just 5 Judicators by themselves on one side of the board. You got the wrong memo.
Opposite of the Zangor as well. So once you put the pink horrors down, simply because of the limitations of the bubble that you were deploying into, I obviously knew that you couldn't put Zangor on that side. They'd have to go onto the other side. So I tried to load everything up against the pink horrors and force the Zangor to maneuver into a good position.
Which is smart.
And and it looked awesome. I've got to say, having loads of Zinch just in a bubble like that, and all the vibrant colours, and the fact that the Zangor is beautiful blue and the pink horrors are, obviously pink. But it was such a nice, it looked amazing. It looked awesome.
It was a good looking game.
Yeah.
So I had a bit of a sort of interesting decision to make, because obviously if I take the first turn, I give you potential double turn. But if I give you the first turn, then I figured I was going to take a bunch of basically unmitigated Judicator shooting.
Yep.
And you could have even brought in the Vanguard straight away and gone for that shooting.
Yep. And
my biggest fear was losing my kind of squishy wizard heroes, almost straight away, despite the benefit of the new Look Out Sir rule that gives you -1 to hit. I've got a lot of 5 wound heroes behind 5 and 6 up saves. It's not,
they're vulnerable.
They're very vulnerable. So I took the first turn, if only to kind of get the magic going, basically. Just get the magic started. Party magic. Zinch party magic. My first album available now. There was some sort of I got such a huge, such a huge benefit to casting from the arcane terrain and the +2 for ender spells that it really was just a big old party of stuff. So Gaunt Summoner up on the Balewind to extend range, get extra spells, and then incredibly I managed to roll double ones twice for both of the pink horror casting attempts, as the pink horrors just start out cold. But one of them was used to fling the Ether Void Pendulum, which is the sort of space scythe that can only move in one direction, and point it at the unit of Judicators that were on their own. Because it meant that those Judicators, it basically was giving you a choice. Those Judicators are either going to take D6 mortal wounds at least once, or they're not going to be able to move towards me and shoot me.
Yeah.
And that was a really fun end of spells. we've had the conversation about magic so many times, but that was a moment where I cast a spell and it was funny for both of us because those guys are just looking at this. It's like, how brave are we, boys?
I love that so much. And the model for that spell is just beautiful as well. Like,
and I think I'd painted it in the time between the last session.
It looked awesome. It just looked so awesome. But also it's just very, very funny. The fact that they were on their own and opposite the Zangor, which is obviously the big sort of sledgehammer you've got in your army. And then on top of that, out of nowhere, a fucking space scythe comes right at them.
Movement wise, I basically I knew that the Zangor had to engage on the other side of the board.
Yeah.
Like, those Judicators are annoying, but they're going to take at least D6 damage and then more as I have a plan for that side of the board. So, I started to run, and a big benefit of the Zangor is they can run and charge. So they're basically always running, and moving them takes a while because there's 30 of them, but like with command points and things, I was confident I could get across the board. So I started the process of moving them around, basically left everything else where it was because although I did move the curse thing to try and make sure I was in range to kind of bounce spells back at your wizard if she did choose to actually.
I forgot to mention I did take a Knight Incantor.
Oh yeah, we forgot. Yeah. Also, I should mention, even though it's not really going to affect the battle report at all, curselings can steal spells. This is not going to happen in this game. Spoilers. Despite really wanting it to.
Yeah.
But that's partly because you never successfully cast a spell.
No, so one of the other points about this scenario is that wizards outside of the central bubble are -1 to cast. And the spell that the Incantor was constantly trying to cast was already quite difficult. So, and Tzeentch is there to unbind it anyway. So, not a huge amount of spells coming out of the Stormcast army, as you'd expect finding Tzeentch, really.
Yeah. So then we come over to your first turn, Tom. And just to remind you, this was the turn that you kind of moved everything forward. And it was a lot of Judicator shooting at the
giant glaring target that is the evil Tzeentch wizard on a massive pillar of swirling vortex energy.
I said this as we were deploying, but when I deploy, it's bad strategically, but I have this sort of diorama creation instinct. So I set up the vortex on the dais because it felt right.
Yeah, right.
And I like the idea that almost, it's not, nothing in the rules of the scenario that state this, but being on the vortex felt like it was the thing that was making the ritual happen.
Yeah.
Like this is the center of it.
Yeah.
Like it's actually reaching up to the tower and drawing it down from the sky.
Yeah, it looked incredible. And also, he had to go up on the vortex somewhere just to get,
he always does.
To do what he does. That's what he does. And it doesn't matter if you did that, 12 inches the other direction. It would have been the same. You'd still be in range of all the shooting. So yeah, you were pretty much just doomed to be shot.
And can we just say as well that like the new vortex rules are so much player friendlier than the old one. It's been nerfed substantially, but it just feels like a solid option that has its roles and it has its downsides, and it's no longer this weird kind of set of exceptions that it used to be. Good job.
It was such a bizarre thing before because you couldn't hit it.
Yeah.
So the idea that you couldn't go in and just be in melee combat is just cutting out a entire section of the game.
Yeah.
But the new rules are excellent for it. I think it's well pointed as well. I think it's still useful, and it gives you the extra spell, right?
It gives you one extra spell and gives you an extra 6-inch range on all your spells. So when I've got something that's pretty good, it's like you end up with, decent range and 3 spells per turn. It's good, but it's not the kind of crazy horde destroying mega thing it used to be.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that that's happened because the model is amazing, and the way that the idea of putting, your wizard on this model, and it just looks fantastic. It always looks awesome. But yes, I shot.
You shot at it.
I shot it. I shot that thing. And they did quite well. You're always relying on the Adjudicator Primes to do all the work.
Well, that was the thing. Adjudicator Prime did all the work, which is a running theme, right?
And it was the Adjudicator Prime that was facing down the scythe. And the Zangor.
You marched and you chose Scythe over not Scythe.
Yeah. So, what I did with that side of the board, these poor isolated Adjudicators, I just moved them straight forward towards, the endless spell that was hurtling towards them. And I just basically decided I'm going to take D6 mortal wound because it's the prime that does the damage and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And, that prime did do the damage, and there's a kind of sort of heroism to that, the fact that they stoically strode forward.
Well, that was the thing. So the Adjudicators that were in no danger completely failed to do anything.
Yeah.
And because of the lookouts rule that does still apply when you're up on the vortex, so it was -1 to hit, and they just whiffed everything.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that at that range, because someone at this point is waving around on top of a tornado, lookout sir has to literally be shouting, "Look out!" as he dodges all these arrows from one side.
Duck!
And then all of your normal dudes on the other side missed. And then basically no, they didn't. What happened was I basically used a big load of my destiny dice to survive.
That's true.
And then that ended up being a good gambit just about, because the Judicated Prime managed to get my got someone to 1 wound.
Yeah. If you hadn't have used those Destiny dice I think there were 2 crucial saves that you deployed 5s or 6s to negate. And if you hadn't have done that, he would have been off in the first turn, which is always the risk for Tzeentch, that until you start, locking up that shooting, those heroes go down real fast.
Yeah. Yes. But obviously him surviving any further than that was a bit reliant on the turn roll, which came next. And you did get the double turn.
I did. I rolled my gigantic. I've got a massive wooden dice now. That I roll for priority rolls. It's enormous.
It's huge, yeah. It's a little bit intimidating to me. It thumps onto the table.
Clunk. Got it. Yeah, so I got the double turn, and the trouble with running a foot infantry army is that they're always a bit sluggish. And so there are ways with Stormcast to teleport them around using spells and things, but I didn't have that ability in my army. So everyone was just marching forward. My Sequitors ran, my Formulators charged up towards the Pink Horrors. They kind of swapped flank, actually. Like, they were originally going to go like down the bottom, and they ended up like turning around.
You basically played Ring a Rosie with the Zangor.
Yeah.
It's like whichever way around the circle the Zangor went, you went the other way.
Yeah, because if I just run the Formulators into the block of 30 Zangor, they just get chewed up. And but also, if you just run into other stuff in the middle of like a bubble of Tzeentch, you just get chewed up eventually. But they did some damage, like they were able to get up there.
Yeah, so you wiped out, so there was a kind of crucial, sort of series of, this turn was the turn that the Gaunt Summoner died to shooting, for one thing. A big Doot, killed a Zangor, which was important. And I think because the Gaunt Summoner died to the first unit of Adjudicators, you're able to put the others into the Zangor and get some kills.
Yeah.
Crucially, you weren't able to get 4 kills, which is enough to remove an attack from the entire unit.
It was one off, wasn't it?
Yeah, you were one off. And that was on Battle Shock at the end of the turn as well. So that's,
true.
And then the Fulminators went into one of the units of Pink Horrors, and I used the Destiny dice to save the banner.
Yeah.
But then, because I had no Destiny 1s, the entire unit was destroyed on Battle Shock. So the Fulminators, it's what, 220 points of Fulminators, but they are wiping out, a whole unit of Pink Horrors just on the charge, basically.
And also just, there's a great value of just getting that unit into the circle and just being a thing that has to be dealt with and has to be a distraction. You can't just leave them alone. I didn't mind that they were exposed and that they were overstretched, but it was just making you have to deal with them and not come out and perhaps batter everything else in my army. Immediately.
It's an interesting one because, like, I saw obviously the Gaunt Summoner go, it's going to have loads of units. It's like losing a hero like that is a big deal.
Yeah.
And it was a bit scary. And then this sort of translated into sort of, also because, you took the double turn, I got to move the first end of the spell. There's only one end of the spell, which meant that Ether Void Pendulum went straight into the Judicators and did 5 mortal wounds, which was pleasingly not anticlimactic.
Yeah. So 2 of them were just horribly butchered. And it was like the 2 that were just standing next to the Judicator Prime that had just taken the killing shot on the Gaunt Summoner.
Yeah.
So I mean, in my mind's eye, it's just like he's taking aim, and this enormous, vast, terrifying, magic scythe is just coming towards him. But his aim stays true, and he manages to get the shot off just as his 2 friends next to him just are obliterated in a sort of bloody mess by this horrible endless spell that just keeps on going and going off into the distance forever, because that's how endless spells work in Warhammer.
To live a different life, or to be resummoned later in this game.
Indeed.
Yes. So then, I got my second turn, and I was sort of having that feeling of like, ooh, this is going south a little bit, because I am still very afraid of the Fulminators, because we had a good year of me having good reason to be very afraid of the Fulminators.
They're pretty great.
So I had a bit of sort of adjustment to do. And then, my second turn, I had an absolutely disastrous magic phase.
Yeah.
So I wanted to throw out the Geminids, because they've changed the Geminids in a cool way. So this is the light and dark orbs. And they each have a different debuff, and they each do D3 mortal wounds. And the FAQ states that if they both hit the same target, they don't do anything, which has become really interesting. It means you have to but they can't go away from a certain distance from each other, so you have to kind of find the right spot for them.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to do was throw them out and put the -1 attack one into the Fulminators, and then the -1 to hit one into the Sequitors.
Yeah.
And so, but you used your once per game unbind to stop that from happening.
Yeah, the nice thing in Cantor has the ability to once in a game just delete a spell, basically.
Yeah.
If she's within 30 inches.
And that was a good choice.
Yeah, that would have been bad.
And then, after that, every other spell I wanted to cast, I either failed or you unbound.
Yeah.
Which was but super cinematic because the God Summon dies, the Veilwind goes down, and suddenly magic just stops working.
Yeah. Which
normally for me in a game like this is a complete death sentence. It's like, this is what I've got. I've got this and weirdos. But actually with the Zangor, because the Veilwind went down and its footprint vanished, it meant I could spend my movement phase getting some people out of the way and then get the Zangor across the center of the circle and directly into the Fulminators. With that run and charge, they had so much space. They have a 24-inch threat range, so they can go a long way.
And you could certainly guarantee it, like both with Destiny Dice and with the command points. You can really guarantee that threat range as well. It's really good. Very strong.
And so I also, because you had wiped out an entire unit of pink horrors in the previous turn, we had to, I missed my window for this a little bit, but we managed to kind of figure it out. That meant I could summon 2 units of 10 blue horrors, which I then sent out towards this recently scythed unit of Judicators.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons, because the new summoning rule means that I can summon within 12 inches of a hero and more than 9 inches from enemy models, which meant that it kind of made sense for me to leave one of my flanks open, because that's the one where I'm just going to fill with horrors as the pinks die elsewhere.
Yeah, totally.
Like feed them to the other side, rather than trying to fight both sides and ending up with a situation where I don't have any space.
I really like the new summoning rules. Facing both you playing Tzeentch and Jim playing Death.
Yeah.
A lot of the games have come down to like clutch summoning and just like really smart, bringing up a unit suddenly 9 inches away, but in a way that affects the game. Like that. That's really, really cool, actually. And, both players know exactly what the parameters are because that 9-inch bubble is so consistent across Age of Sigmar. It's really significant when a unit can drop closer than 9 inches.
Yeah.
And the odds of a 9-inch charge are just like, it's a big gamble to do it.
When it happens, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you
can't
feel
rely
bad.
on it.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really nicely balanced. It just feels really good. AOS is a game of chance a lot of the time anyway, and that's a good mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, so blue horrors to the other side to deal with those Judicators, and then the Zangor into the Fulminators and just absolutely annihilated them.
They did.
I appreciate a big difference here is no Castellant, so no Castellant buff, which is traditionally a big thing. But
even then though, I think the weighted dice is a good thing.
I mean, it took, so is it 240 points for the Fulminators?
I think they're 240.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it is literally a 480 point unit versus a 240 point unit.
Yeah.
So you're not expecting it to be anything other than one-sided. But I was surprised because obviously the footprint of the models meant I couldn't get everything into base-to-base contact, but I'd positioned them so that the great weapons with Rend are in front and they just ripped them to pieces. Like it was over very, very quickly for the Fulminators.
Yeah, be able to stack up those attacks is really strong on them, which is why you want 30 of them, right? Because you get, is it for every 9 you get an extra?
For every 9 you get an extra attack, and the maximum unit size is 30, and you also get a discount if they are in groups of 30. So it should be 540 points for 30, but it's 480 instead. You get a 60-point discount. So it's just, it is difficult to justify taking them in any other number. Right?
Absolutely.
Because they just become so efficient at 30.
Yeah.
And I think at 30, they become a kind of, even though it's a horde unit, they become a kind of monster. They're equivalent to one of the bigger monsters in the game. But
they're a lot more flexible because of that footprint. You can spread them out. You can engage multiple units. You can block off and control space in a way that monsters can't in the same way. So, it's an excellent unit. I think, I was talking about this after the game, but I think they're just tough enough to justify to be one of probably the best units in the game, perhaps. Because they've got 2 wounds each. They've got like 5.
2 wounds each, 5 up save, and then the ones with shields have 6 up mortal.
Yeah.
6 up any immortal, ignore save, I guess.
That ablative is very, very good as well. Cause how many, you can take 12 shields in that unit?
So, they could all be shields. So shields is a standard loadout.
Gotcha.
But there's a sort of, if this is interesting, because I think it came up recently, someone in the community collecting Tzeentch. That's a very confusing war scroll because of the different weapon loadouts, the mutants, the great weapons, the leaders, the banners, and so on. There is a sort of, a mathematical kind of way of figuring out the optimal build. And it is basically to have, so 2 in 5 can be great weapons. 1 in 5 can be a mutant. and anything else can be either a dual wield man or a shield person. The optimal way of building Zangor is for every 5, have 1 mutant with dual weapons, 2 great weapons, and 2 shields.
This would be the best GCSE.
Yeah. A unit of 30 Zangors leaves Plymouth at 8:30 a.m.
Travelling at 12 miles an hour.
Will they kill fulminators coming from Birmingham? The answer is yes, they will, and they did.
Will.
But yeah, so that means that in my unit of 30 I have 12 shields, 12 great weapons, and 8 mutants.
So mutants get extra attacks, right? That's the
Mutants get, no, so mutants get an extra attack, and dual wielding units get, this is, like, it really is a GCSE maths problem, because dual wielding units get +1 to hit. Mutants get +1 to attack, but have to dual wield.
Okay.
But you could have normal dual wielding as well. So it's more like that riddle where it's like, my neighbor lives in a blue
yeah,
house.
exactly, right.
But basically, yeah, so basically always do it, so that mutants always take as many mutants as you can, they have to dual wield, but have them be your only dual wielders. Take as many great weapons as you can, because the great weapons are good.
Yeah.
And then anything that's left should be a shield. And your special models, it doesn't hugely matter which one they are, but like, I converted my Zangor so that my banner bearer is like, the banner is mounted onto a spear, so it's a great weapon. My, leader, the champion, is holding a great weapon because that model gets +2 to hit, which is really useful. And my, hornblower is a mutant because it made sense.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, there is a way of doing it logically. But anyway, the point is they really did mince those formats.
They did a really good job.
And then, after that, I got a double turn, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
And now I started to worry for the other reason I worry. Initially I was like, I've lost. And then I was like, oh no, I've won.
I'm amazed. Like, AOS is a 5-turn game.
Yeah.
And it so often is, like, you often really can change in the last couple of turns. And it's only until I played a bit more that I realised you've got to stick it out.
Yeah, you do. Like, cause I worried at this point that I had all these new toys, the Curse Thing, the Magister, and I was like, well, I'm probably not going to use them. My Zangor are probably going to kill everything.
Right.
Cause if they can kill Fulminators, the scariest unit, then what can't they kill? And we'll get to the answer to that. So, this turn, I managed to kind of like have, a much bigger, magic turn in a lot of ways. Did a thing that, incredibly, you've never seen me do, which is send up a different person on a Balewind Vortex, thanks to the new spell rules.
Felt very wrong.
But it was super cinematic, because basically, the Magister, the little second in command dude, steps back onto this point where the Gaunt Summoner dies and summons the Balewind himself and continues the ritual. And this gave him the range he needed to kind of start flinging out some more spells and doing some more stuff. Getting stuff done. The Blue Horrors, managed to kill the unluckiest Judicators in the world in the shooting phase.
R.I.P.
Yep. And the Zangor went straight in, this is a point where I got a really good run roll and then a really good charge. So the strength of the Zangor, as you say, is controlling space. From having to crowd around 2 Fulminators, I could then spread out down your entire flank or down your entire line of battle. And with 1 unit of 30 Zangor, basically get into combat with the Judicators, sort of the Knight Encounter, but she's on the back line, and the Sequitors.
Yeah.
Completely annihilated the other unit of Judicators with just maybe 6 of the Zangor in base-to-base contact. They just ripped them to pieces.
You hadn't even used half of your attacks that they could have used as well. Like
they didn't. Oh no, actually no. They did. You need all their attacks because the last Judicator was killed by beaks.
Yeah, that's true. Actually.
The last one was pecked to death.
4+5+, no rend.
Yeah. It's like, die, but they did. And then I was like, well, this is, at this point, my mind is in the sort of like, well, shit, I'm just rolling you with these kind of mega chickens.
The mega birds.
Yeah, these are the biggest, beefiest birds, apart from the big beefy bird who was absent in this game. And that was because I had reserved all of the great weapons for the Sequitors. And the great weapons just annihilated the Fulminators when it wasn't even close. And so I roll and I get decent rolls, loads of attacks, all the rest of it. And the Sequitors saved absolutely everything.
So the thing with Sequitors, they're the Sacrosanct Chamber. They've got magical capabilities, which is very new for the Stormcast. At the start of a combat phase, you can choose to channel that magic in one of 2 directions. You can help them to hit, or you can give the ability to reroll all of their saves. They've got a 4+ save default. So 4+ is rerolling is just very strong. It's very strong. And you have rend on those weapons, but even then, like it was, they are very tanky when they want to be. And with their great weapons, they can actually deal damage and kill stuff.
Yeah.
They're just a really, really formidable unit.
And it was so cool to kind of like hit a immovable with the Zangor. Like, it sort of reminded me of sort of the reverse of how, well, maybe not even a scenario of hit, but we've had games both ways where one of us has had a unit that just doesn't seem to be able to be stopped, whether that's the Retributors or the Zangor or something like that just wants to walk down the board and kill everything in its path.
Yeah, it's like a wave.
Yeah, and the Zangor just hit the, 9 Sequitors we're talking about versus 27 Zangor.
Yeah.
Didn't move.
Just tanked it. Yeah. They're spectacular. There were some, I don't even feel as though it was like terribly lucky. There was some luck in the dice there, but that is what they do. Like,
yeah.
That save without...
And it felt really cool as well.
Yeah. And I sort of knew they could do that because I've used them before against Chimp. I've seen what they can do. And they are like, for me, they fit the Stormcast fantasy perfectly. Not just like in the way the models look and stuff, but in the kind of fact that the shield wall, the fact that if they choose to, they can just put their shields down and stay there for as long as they can. It was just really satisfying. It was really fun. And also it moved your Zangor out of the bubble as well, which was a big part of the game for me, was that if your Zangor stayed in that bubble, I didn't have faith in my damage output to get rid of it.
Yeah.
I never thought I was going to be able to get rid of that block of 30 Zangor because of so many wounds. Don't have the kind of big impactful monster thing that might go and crush them. Once they were out of the circle and Sequitors were kind of tanking them, there was an opening there, and I had all this stuff in space and in pursuit that could come on at any moment.
Yeah, and that brings us to your next turn, because the next turn was the moment the Vanguard finally show up.
Yeah, finally, the
everyone's
general.
getting slaughtered.
Everyone's getting slaughtered. Those poor Judicators have been shot at by a giant scythe. And
the Incantor will die shortly to Zangor.
Yeah.
She gets ripped to pieces by Birdman.
Inevitably, right.
Yeah.
She was amazing though, like, I really rate the Incantors as well. Like, their, auto-unbind ability is invaluable, and I think I'd probably have to take 2 in an army, so I'm gonna
That's really scary for me. If you have 2 auto-unbinds at any point in the game, at any range, it's like, one of my turns isn't going to go perfectly. Because a lot of my spellcasting is like, and I'll get to it, but like, this, then this. Cute combos. Like, that's what's fun about it for me, is it's like, whether that's Balewind or something else, or a combo we'll get to in a minute, but like, there's always, almost every spell you ever have is better in a 1-2 punch with something else. So.
And that Balewind, and then combining into the extended range, the improved casting ability.
Yeah.
Like, that's a great, like, Tzeentch combo, and anything you can do to disrupt that. Auto-unbinds are just a massive problem. It was telling that when the Incantor got pecked to death, my fortunes started to change. Because suddenly you were just free to combo and combo and combo. Because, you were in the middle of the board, you were on that arcane terrain, your endless spells, you had +2 to cast because of the scenario, and it was just, you were starting to
it's magic time.
Guarantee that stuff, right? And when Tzeentch starts to get that power and that momentum, it becomes terrifying. Like, so much damage starts to come out. And a lot of the fun thing about Tzeentch is like, you've just got to shake up the routine, almost like Tzeentch is there like a machine.
Yeah.
It's gonna put out all these mortal wounds.
Well, it's like, the thing I like about this thematically is Tzeentch is all about plans. Like, and Tzeentch will claim that everything is part of the plan.
Sure.
But like, Tzeentch is all about like, I'll do this, and then this will happen, and then this will happen. And if you throw something into the middle of that there's a spanner in the works, it's really devastating, because it's like, the whole idea is almost that like you embrace randomness, but also you control it. Like, that's the lie of Tzeentch. And that's why I like it's completely embodied in the rules. It's completely embodied in Destiny dice. Like, look how meticulous and unknowable fate is, except I am cheating.
I happen to have the upper hand here.
Yeah.
So, having unbinds, having those wizards is absolutely essential. That was it felt like an interesting point. So when you I brought on my Vanguard force, so I brought on my general, the Lord Aquila, and flanked by 2 units of 5 Vanguard hunters, and when they come on though, they can't move or charge.
Yeah.
Obviously that would be horrendous if they could. But they sort of show up and then sort of flex. So it's weird because
we basically joke that they all just sort of dabbed at the edge of the board.
yeah, because they're just like, oh, we're here now. They just like strike a pose, and next turn they're going to do something. But it was interesting because like you were slightly out of position a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the Zangor were out of the circle. One of your units of pink horrors was gone. The blue horrors were again outside of the circle and had some travelling to do. And then the Vanguard, this Vanguard unit had come in to try and rush into the middle in the final turns. And I was wondering what you thought about.
So I personally, I was relieved that they all came down in one place. Because it was going to be easier to hit the microphone with a beer can if you're wondering what just happened. It's going to be easier to deal with them. I think in hindsight, I think you probably should have brought them on a turn earlier. But that's sort of, I think we were both getting, a sense of what, I think if you played it again, knowing how much damage the Zangor can be expected to do, bringing them on a turn earlier to just make it less of a done deal that the Zangor are going to go straight into the Sequitors and the Adjudicators would have given me a bigger decision to make.
Yeah.
Because at the time, the Zangor were kind of out of the game at that point, but they also killed so much stuff that it was, fine.
Yeah.
But it was also, you were right, like, it was also like, I have to stop this stuff from to staying alive for the rest of the game. And the Zangor are probably no longer a concern because they're going to win against the Sequitors eventually.
Yeah.
But that's the rest of their game, is fighting these Sequitors. So it's like, can everything else kill a Lord Aquila who has a 4-up mortal wound save relic, and 2 units of Vanguard Hunters? And I thought I probably could.
Yeah.
But it's cagey.
It's chancy, isn't it?
It's very chancy.
It's slightly dicey. I think you're right though. I think, the risk you take when you hold stuff in space or in pursuit and then bring them on later is that, the units are pointed around their sort of damage output and efficiency at the time. And every turn they're off the board and not rolling those dice, you're sort of wasting their point value to an extent. So yeah, just an extra turn of shooting dice on the Bellwind Vortex guy might have done something.
I think you got a little unlucky. Basically making that play at that time was, I think, the riskier play in some ways. And it relied on, not dice totally, but it was like, what happened for the rest of the game was to some extent going to come down to fate. And it happened to be that having had such cold magic phase earlier in the game, a couple of things happened. We rolled off for the turn and we both rolled 6s.
Yeah.
And thanks to the new rule, because I went first the previous turn, I got to pick. So I went first. So to deny you a double turn, double turn, that would have been really big for you. Us both rolling 6s. Well, that's dice, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then I had a very good magic phase. Like not in the sort of Lord of Change kills everybody kind of school of magic, but like a lot of D3 spells that were doing 3 mortal wounds, that kind of thing.
But to me, like, that type of magic phase felt kind of fairer and more just right than a lot of the kind of Lord of Change insano spells that are super swingy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it feels like loads of D3 mortal wound spells feels better than like one potentially 27 mortal wound mega spell. Yeah. Even though I think there is space in the room for both. I think the thing with Lords of Change, for example, is a monster of that scale you shouldn't have in a 2,000 point, anything less than 2,000 points. And even in 2,000 points, they can feel like they're weighting the scale a little bit. Like, there is a tendency, and you see this all over competitive Age of Sigmar, to cram as many of those in to every scale of game as possible. Like next week, I'm going to do a 1,000-point tournament. In fact, you're away, I think, but like next Sunday is the follow-up to the tournament we did at Big.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah.
And a lot of those lists revolve around like get the biggest monster my faction has and then add battle line.
Yeah.
And that I don't think is what the game's intended for. And at 1,500 points, this feels right. I think when you're talking about a 2,000 plus point game, the odd mega spell is fine and probably adds a bit of, keeps the game moving probably because it just removes a unit every now and then.
Sure.
Anyway, at this scale, I think you're right. And so, but talking about 1-2 punches, so, the Magister rapidly becoming the hero of this game.
Yeah.
On top, I used a command ability specific to this scenario to give him an extra spell. On top of the Bellwind Vortex, he sends forth the Geminids of Ulgu Haish. One into the Vanguard Hunters, one of the units of Vanguard Hunters, and one into the Lord Aquila to reduce the amount of attacks Lord Aquila would get, and also to -1 to hit on the Vanguard Hunters.
Yeah.
And also for a very specific reason, which is I wanted, when you do D3 mortal wounds, there's a two-thirds chance that you're a 2 in 3 chance that you're going to do an odd number of mortal wounds. And this is really important because his other spell, the, Bolt of Change, if it kills something, turns them into a Chaos Spawn. But it's a D3 mortal wound spell. So against 2 wound Stormcast, I need one of your guys to be
down on
1 health.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's a 2/3. So it's 2/3 chances of guaranteeing it, but it's still like, I really, really wanted that to happen because I didn't want to paint Chaos Spawn for nothing. So,
yeah.
But also because it creates a big problem for you in the back of the board, right?
Sure.
Like, the Gribble Man appear.
Yeah.
And, so that was the calculated thing with sending the D3 mortal wound spell first, followed by the other D3 mortal wound spell to try and guarantee the kill.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's that combo, right? Like,
yeah.
If I'd have had something to dispel or disrupt or anything, that would have...
I think dispelling the Chaos Spawn thing would have been the important thing to do there, but yeah.
But I obviously didn't have the means.
Yeah. Which happened. Yay!
Hooray!
One of the Vanguard very much turned into tentacles immediately.
It's pretty rad.
It was pretty rad.
I've managed to dispel one of those earlier in the game.
Oh, you did? Yeah. That was earlier in the,
But again, like once that Incantor left the field, well, that's a euphemistic way of putting it, isn't it?
Yeah, she was ripped to pieces by birdmen.
By birdmen. Once that dispel was gone, suddenly these things start to matter.
Yeah, and so, good turn for me all around, because basically, good mortal wounds, got a Chaos Spawn out, charged, the Curseling had basically not done anything all game apart from provide the +1 to wound buff to the Zangor.
Yeah, he just ran around in circles quite a lot.
Yeah, and then he charged Dr. Doots, who'd taken some mortal wounds from another source. I just wanted, because he's quite fighty, the Curseling. I really wanted him to do some big fighting.
Not a bad profile.
He's got not a bad profile. He's got 7 attacks. Like, it's not terrible. Split across 3 weapons. Right. He's got 3 arms. And also, devastated one of the units of Vanguard Hunters, got some mortal wounds onto the Aquila, just feeling like, I can kill these dudes. And also, I'd banked enough fate points by this point through casting spells to summon a Herald of Tzeentch, which is another source of a D6 mortal wound spell in my zone.
Nice.
All good stuff. Curseling charges at the Knight Heralder, and I managed to dramatically whiff all 7 attacks. He's got 3 arms, and every single one of them was just windmilling pointlessly.
What's he doing?
I don't know.
You're fighting a man with a horn. One of his hands holds a horn. He can't even defend himself.
Like, prior to the Magister kind of popping off as like the MVP of this game for me, I was really worried that all of my new models weren't either going to appear, like I'd never get the Chaos Spawn, or would just be like, okay, it's new models time. They're all rubbish, and you don't get to see their cool stuff.
Yeah.
But Magister, yes. Curseling, and then I don't understand my own handwriting. So something else happened in that turn. God knows.
Who knows?
Your 4th turn, I think by this point you'd lost all the Sequitors. It was just Vanguard versus the world, get into the zone.
It was just rush into the central bubble. And as you say, like, when I actually decided to bring them down there and just run them in, it was purely like, can I make the armor saves or not? That's gonna decide the outcome. These guys can't kill very much, which is a big problem with the Vanguard. They just don't really have the punch, that anyone would fear.
Yeah.
Even the shooting is very swingy because the 4+ is to hit or wound, I can't remember. But, and no rend or anything. There's
a lot of shooting at the Magister and not getting much done.
Absolutely, yeah. And so Dr. Doots inspired one of the units of Vanguard Hunters. They could play a tune in the hero phase that, makes one unit very happy. And so they can charge. And because, Vanguard Hunters, as part of their normal rules, they can run and shoot.
For the record, it's the Vengabus the Vengabus is coming. We like to party.
Is coming.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I had a unit which could run, shoot, and then charge, which is rare in the game Age of Sigmar. And it felt great, but none of their attacks had impact.
I had some good saves. So, but basically, like, the Magister, the Gaunt Summon has a 6-up save, the Magister has a 5-up save. And +1 from being on the Balewind Vortex, rerolling ones thanks to a Mystic Shield provided by the Curseling, which is the one thing the Curseling did all game, basically, was provide Mystic Shield to a wizard, meant that I suddenly had a 4-up save rerolling ones, which turns me into a Stormcast Eternal's Liberator.
It really does, yeah. Is it a Liberator on a
5-wound Liberator riding a Vortex, basically.
And it turns out that Vanguard Hunters don't really have the tools to deal with that. And even in combat, they just didn't do anything as well. But like the main thing was that for them to just sit there and you had one turn of damage basically at that point to clear some units. And so the scenario requires that me as the attacker, I need to get 2 units into that bubble, survive by the end of round 5, and that is a victory. I think it's a minor victory.
It's a minor victory, yeah.
So if you get 3 in or something, it's major.
Yeah.
And so I threw in Dr. Doots, that's 1. I threw in Unit of Vanguard Hunters, that's 2. And the Lord Aquila made it in, that's 3. And there was a dangling lone
single
Vanguard, brave Vanguard Hunter.
Who was fleeing from his mates who were being murdered by a tentacle beast at the back of the board.
Yeah. And he was outside the circle, but he had the potential to like retreat into it. Or
Yeah.
do that. And so the final turn for you was just, can you kill
Well, yeah, so again, it was down to the roll-off somewhat. The roll-off came down to we both rolled 1s this time, and I won again because of the tie-breaking to the first turn. And then, I had a sort of, it was really, it was an interesting turn because, I managed to get the pendulum back out into the sort of, but kind of stuck, but enough to do some damage. And I remember I got my, 6, mortal wounds spell off, D6 mortal wound spell off on the Herald, the new Herald, and rolled a 6 for mortal wounds. And you momentarily forgot that you'd given, your general a 4-up mortal wound save artifact. I was like, oh, well, he's dead then. I was like, no. And then he took 1 wound from it.
That was a hot roll.
And then, so I was pouring all this magic into the Lord Aquila for that turn, and it was just 1 wound at a time, down to, I think, 3 wounds left on your Lord Aquila. Shooting did absolutely nothing.
No, it's not going to get Stormcastery.
No, but still, right? No, shooting didn't do anything. And then, but 2 really crucial things happened. One is that the main thing is that my Curseling, useless this entire game, pulled off a 11-inch charge to run around your other units and directly into the Lord Aquila, which is a cool kind of ending moment. It's general on general.
Yeah.
And crucially, I had given him an artifact from the Realm of Metal list that I picked partly for thematic reasons because it felt right, but it's a suit of armor called Gildenbane, and Gildenbane switches off other artifacts within 3 inches of it. And I picked this because of the experience we previously had with the Lens of Reflection, Lens of Refraction, which has been FAQ'd since and nerfed a bit, but still, knowing that you will probably always go for some kind of mortal wound save against me, I really like this dynamic because I can switch it off, but I have to get this guy within 3 inches of you. It's not like I'll cast a spell and do it. So he charges across the battlefield, gets into 3 inches of Lord Aquila, switches off your mortal wound save, and then doesn't whiff and manages to kill the Lord Aquila on the charge, which is a cool moment. For me, it's a bad moment for you, but still. Meanwhile, the one guy running from the Chaos Spawn gets chased down and completely murdered by that Chaos Spawn, if I remember right.
Makes sense.
And this leaves, and then the Vanguard Hunters, who by this point have charged into the Belwyn Vortex, are kind of trying to hack it down, trying to destroy it, get down to 2 people, but I can't shift them any more than that. And at that point, incredibly, the game is a guaranteed draw.
Yeah.
Because if I haven't managed to completely clear you from that zone, it's a draw. If you have 2, it's a win. But you had 2 models left out of your entire army.
Yeah.
But that was enough for us to end on a tie.
That's right. So, I had the final turn of of round 5, and what you do is you retreat out of combat, because that's the only place where you can possibly be hurt. And then once you do that, as long as you're outside of the piling range, then that's it. You guaranteed the draw.
Yeah. And I think that we sat and thought about this for a moment afterwards. Like, what does this actually mean?
What does it mean for
because obviously I had vast numbers over you at that point, including most of the Zangor. So those 2 Vanguard Hunters are not getting out of this alive.
No.
But, I like the thought that the ritual's kind of been successful and the Silver Tower's been pulled into reality, but whatever kind of sort of additional powers would have bound it to this specific place and made some kind of substantial change to this landscape and caused problems for the civilization being established in the future has sort of been thwarted. So you've ended up in a sort of stalemate where Tzeentch's foothold has very much been established, but at the same time, the heroic sacrifice of these Vanguard Hunters has prevented
the ritual enough.
Yeah.
And in future, I mean, that giant semi-present Silver Tower is going to be a beacon to Sigmar. Go and deal with this.
Yeah.
Send your best.
In fact, dealing with this may well be a theme of our Miniatures Monthly event in November. It turns out.
Good point, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But nonetheless, and that was a really cool ending. We've never drawn before, I think.
I don't think so, actually.
And it was a really cool kind of like, particularly because, it's almost like new characters kind of delivering the win at the end, both for me and for you, which is
I think both armies had their sort of characteristic moments as well, like very in-fiction correct moments, things that were right for, like Zeech just, having a great magic phase and turning dudes into chaos spawns. And then, or for me, the Secretors just taking it at this vast unit, it just felt right for both armies.
Can I give a shout out to my extremely sensible Chaos Spawn? So the great thing about Chaos Spawn is both their attack value, as in how many attacks they get, and their movement value is 2d6. So they are either incredible, maybe borderline broken. Like if you roll double sixes for Chaos Spawn attacks, they get 12 3-up attacks. Because if the roll is a double, they get +1 to hit and +1 to wound.
Right.
Otherwise they're 4-up.
Okay.
So a double six is like a broken for the points. It's, if you paid points for it, it'd be 50 points for, 12 3-up
free
attacks.
Of your spell.
Exactly. Right. Insane. Similarly, their movement value is either 2 or 12, you think, when you look at 2d6, right? Every single time I rolled to determine their number of attacks this game, every single time I rolled 6. I rolled 2 lots of 5 and 1 and 1 lot of 2 and 4.
You had, just very stable spawn.
Yeah, exactly.
Just extremely calm and calculated.
And the one time they had to move, it was a 5, which is very reasonable infantry movement distance. And I like the idea that these Stormcast that have been turned into Chaos Spawn is like, don't worry, I've still got it.
Just the echo of their past ordinariness.
I've turned into 18 knives, but I'm feeling okay. Don't worry, it's alright.
I move exactly as fast and attack exactly as much. They were great, and those models are rad as well.
Yeah, that's
really
a fun
cool.
kit.
They look great, and it was just fun to see them popping up in the middle of a fight.
It's kind of in any kind of form of Warhammer. It's not chaos for me without Chaos Spawn to some extent.
Yeah,
it's like that's the threat of chaos, right? Like you think about it too hard.
It's all just becomes tentacles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's rad. It was really layered game with lots of kind of swings back and forth, and just overall reminded me how much I love playing Warhammer.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah. A happy return to the thing we do.
Definitely.
Right. Now let's transition seamlessly back into the present, Tom.
Ooh,
backwards. And do questions. And because we were bad, we missed an episode, we got loads of them. So look forward to this. We might have to read the questions very quickly, but we're going to try and get through all of them.
Let's do it.
Heroes.
Yeah.
First question comes from Fisty, who writes, Dear Chris and Tom, when painting it feels like I'm always fighting against the paint and brush to get paint where I want it to go or even come off the brush. This can be legitimately depressing at times. Have either of you experienced this? How have you avoided it? This problem is especially apparent on surfaces with slight texture like the Saurus Knight's Cold One's lower legs. Note, this is with thinning the paints and using a wet palette. Do you think painting a stock GW scheme is better starting point for newer painters since they give you a list of paints and how to use them on the Warhammer TV YouTube channel? As a side note, the frumped claws on the Seraphim Cold Ones are incredibly derp. He writes, thanks, Fisty. Before we got to the wet palette thing, my answer to this was just going to be thin your paints.
Yeah. It's because paint consistency is one of the most, for me, the hardest thing to get, especially if you're doing like fine detail work. It's absolutely essential that you've got enough, just the right amount of water, not too much, and that it's flowing off the brush correctly. I found that having good brushes does help.
Yeah.
And GW's brushes are good, but there are, I've got
also,
some Newton ones.
Shake the shit out of your paints.
That's
like if the pigment has mixed or is sort of separated slightly, then that might be a reason you're struggling, either because what's left is too thick or too thin. Shake the shit out of it, water it down probably more than you think you need to, and do 2 coats. Because if the issue is, it's not simply like, if the issue is the paint's literally not coming off the brush, then there's either,
I wonder if maybe look at your primer as well. So if I don't know if you can have a duff batch of primer, or it's not going on in the correct consistency, or there's not enough of it. But yeah, you'll struggle without that. Yeah,
make sure you're using I usually am fine to just paint over a coloured spray that doesn't necessarily have primer in it. But make sure you're
priming with something that has primer in it. So basically, if it's GW stuff, either Chaos Black or white, or if you're using a primer. Like, other than that, like, I kind of know that the experience of like this doesn't seem to be coming off right, but it's almost always a patience issue for me. It's like I'm expecting too much from one coat or something, and then you have to get used to doing 2 or 3 coats. But
it depends a lot on your brush as well. Like, some brushes just, they don't have a huge reservoir and they run out really quickly, so you always get the paint out of it too quickly. Like, this is always a problem for me with like tiny brushes that you see, like army painter ones. There's one called the Psycho, which is absolutely
I've
tiny.
got one of them. Yeah,
and it's kind of has occasional uses, but because the brush is so small, it can't actually hold a reservoir of paint. So you like the better brushes are the ones which are a little bit fatter but have a very fine tip. So I've
basically been painting exclusively recently with one size of sable brush, and there are ethical reasons not to have a sable brush. And I kind of I was a big dumb idiot and didn't kind of investigate that stuff properly before I got one. And so it's because they're animal fur, so there's a lot of, and it's ethically sourced to the extent, make your piece with the extent to which that applies. But it's the bad news if you don't want one is
They're
it's
pretty good.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's really good.
And because it holds paint, because it holds a fine tip as well. So even though it's quite a big brush, I can do detail work with it that I would otherwise be using an artificer brush for. So
yeah, I've got a couple of Windsor and Newtons, and they're all I need. One of them slightly larger, one of them slightly smaller. Really, really good. But yeah, it's up to whatever your preference is.
Regarding following guides or the Warhammer guides, I think following any kind of guide is essential.
Start, for sure. And those videos are excellent, and I wish they'd been around when I started painting, because they're just quite honest about how what it takes to get coverage to look good.
Yeah,
really basic things like that, which I was very bad at starting out as a child.
And it's nice to know that you've got the right paints for what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Whatever paint system you're using. Our next question comes from 18 for 18 Peston champion, Peter, or Fienia from Discord, who writes, "To lovable magic birdman and steely armor man. My question this time is, how do you decide what to do with bases? I'm firmly with the opinion that a miniature isn't done until the base has some level of decoration on it, but I'm also quite boring and unoriginal, tend to just plop some texture paint and maybe a skull on them. What's your thought process with basing? Is it something I'd like to get better at? Love the show. Pete/Fiona from Discord."
I often stress about bases because I feel like I get locked into a basing scheme for literally everything I ever do, because I don't know, we tend to play on certain types of board or certain colours of board. So the idea of suddenly getting some Ideneth and putting bright green grass on the base just isn't going to fit in with the rest of my collection. And so I feel like I'm locked into the old Astro Granite and a few skulls, like Fee describes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know about it. But
and there's something wrong, I've basically because mine started with, when I started painting the Silver Tower models, I was like, I'm not going to spend much time on the bases because at the time I knew they'd be playing on the Silver Tower board, and so there's no basing to match that. So I did blue Astrogranite, basically. And then that blue Astrogranite has become the scheme for my entire terrain board.
Right.
And has sort of evolved a bit. I tend to, it's like, if I have an idea at the time I'm doing the model, I'll do that because it's fun. Like the Curse thing I did recently is the custom base. Or my War Queen. If I don't have an idea, it's fine to do some tufts and a skull.
Yeah.
I just try and create a bit of, I think a bit of verticality is important, whether that's, even if the model's standing flat on the base, having some raised elements helps give us a 3D sense to it.
It's true. I've had really good success with my Vanguard Hunters, who actually, a lot of them are standing on slate, or they've got one foot on slate and the other foot's on the ground, and it varies the poses as well, especially for kits which can look quite similar otherwise, and slate is really good. It's quite responsive.
And that's, I think, so my Necrons are all going to be on cork. I got a shitload of cork.
Great.
Cork bases. As in when the entire army is going to be on cork, to get kind of blasted, kind of apocalypse wasteland look. And there's some things about, working with cork and PVA that can be a bit tricky, but when I get around to doing the army, I'm going to spend a week, a month, however long it takes, doing all of the bases in advance. I'm going to plan and do every single base before I paint a single model.
So they're going to be super consistent across the board.
Yeah, but it also means that the basing side of it is both a project in its own right and therefore fun, balancing out skulls and barbed wire and all these other effects and things. Cool. But also means that when it's done, it's done. And every single model will then get a separate spray of lead belcher plonked on a base, painted.
Nice.
And you've almost, rather than then basing being something you've just finished a painstaking model, then you worry about what the basing. It's like, it's done now. In terms of other ideas, I think, the other thing is like with a model that definitely needs a base, like, you know, Manticore or something, I don't know what to do with it. I just start doing stuff. Like, Milliput is really good for this. Fine grain Milliput, you get more of it, and it mixes faster than green stuff. And importantly, it's like quite clay-like until it goes sort of rock solid. And so often I'll just put big blobs on it down in the base and kind of like sculpt it into hills with some vague sense of where the model's feet will be, so I avoid kind of that. And then you can like just jam stuff into it, like bits of slate or skulls or whatever, and then sort of smooth over the gaps. So, because obviously when you push stuff in, it will create kind of weird effects. And then paint astrogranite or whatever over that, and you end up with really natural looking kind of hills and little, you know, a little bit of surface texture on the base, which again helps.
Excellent.
Yeah. I love basing. Basing is the converting I like doing, because on a flat plane.
Yeah, I agree with Fiona that your models don't look finished unless there's something on the base.
Yeah, definitely. But it's Warhammer. A skull is fine.
Yeah, absolutely. A tuft in the skull, you're done.
Exactly. Next question comes from Orfeo, who writes, "Hi guys, big fan of the podcast. Enjoy listening, and it continually tempts me to give up my 40k army and play AOS instead. With the imminent advent of X-Wing 2.0, are there any particular ships that you want to see buffed and or nerfed? I love B-Wings, but never saw them feature on any competitive lists. Also, on a completely different note, you mentioned some great AOS books a few podcasts ago, but I completely forgot them. Which ones are great to start with? I'd love to get more into the lore."
So we mentioned that the core book is a amazing general introduction to the thing, but Spear of Shadows is probably my favourite of
Spear of Shadows is, so basically all the Josh Reynolds books are good. Yeah. So I'm midway through Soul War at the moment, which is the book that was released to accompany, that's a Josh Reynolds book as well. That's good as well.
Nice.
It's got some good just Nagash stuff in it, and some good Sigmar is far more personally in it.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. You get a lot more what Sigmar's actually like.
Oh, maybe I'll read that.
There's an account of what happened when the Necroquake hit the Chamber of Apotheosis. Nice. It's basically just it's like Thor Ghostbusters. It's like, I think it's really wrong, but also there's a description of like Sigmar just hanging out. He's very much like a Primarch from the Horus Heresy. He's just your big dad. Yeah, your big dad is here, and everyone loves Big Dad. That's and he's just hanging out. But then, like the tower they're in starts to collapse, so Sigmar just grows and becomes massive and holds the roof up like Atlas. Right. So because that's what he can do. Yeah, man, and he becomes the biggest dad. So those are good. Yeah, on the X-Wing stuff, obviously we'll maybe cover some of this stuff off, but if you like B-Wings, you'll be pleased to know that I think B-Wings are secretly pretty good in second edition. Nice. B-Wings used to be very, very good in first edition, to be fair. Yeah. They're part of an archetype called BBB-BZ, which is 4 B-Wings in a Z95, which was a sort of one of those core game archetypes for a long time, deprecated with power creep. Here's my hot tip: 10 Numb plus Elusive, really good ship for 53 points, which isn't a lot. Nice. Natural synergy. Although Rebels are in a bit of a weird place generally in second edition at the moment. As for buffed or nerfed, I think probably let's think. I'm trying to think about second edition stuff off the bat. I think probably maybe TIE bombers, they may have been buffed too much. They've been they had their points cost kind of destroyed in order to bring them back into the game, and they might be a bit good now for what you get for the points. They're kind of, but you know, we're not going to know till it comes out kind of how important that ends up being.
I really like the Slave One ship and model. Yeah, and I've liked the opportunity to run that in games.
Very good in second edition. Ooh. Might be one of the top tier scum ships.
Yes, I do like the toilet seat as well. What's it called?
Jumpmaster.
Yeah, I know it kind of broke the game to an extent, but I really like the model. I love the idea of a lopsided dial for a lopsided ship as well.
It's a stupid idea, but it really does prefer to turn.
It's very
left.
funny. It's very funny.
Turn right, turn left. It likes to go left, doesn't like to go right.
Who would design a thing like that? Good.
Yes, I guess more on X-Wing second edition when we get to it. But also, I suspect this question might have been written at a time when less was known about second edition. Yeah, this question came in July. So
there you go.
Yeah, so maybe we know a little bit more than we did then. Also, Tom, you need to stop hitting your microphone.
Yeah, I've moved it.
Fans of Tom hitting his microphone with drinks will have really enjoyed this episode.
Cup of tea.
Next question comes from Mr. Juice, whose email is frighteningly titled, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?"
The best question.
Yo, this morning my wife raised a not unreasonable question. What is the long-term plan for my models? Although I do occasionally get to play, I'm mostly in this for the hobby, and due to the nature of my work and the fact that I don't have kids, I get a lot of painting time. If I keep going at the rate I currently am, and assuming I don't burn out, I'll end up with a collection of thousands of painted models within a few years. I don't live in a mansion, so storing thousands of tiny plastic men is going to be tricky. The idea of selling off my hard work makes me sad, but I suspect I'll get to a point where it's that or stop painting. Assuming neither of you live in a warehouse or have a TARDIS in your hobby room, I guess this is going to be a problem for you too, sooner or later. What is your intended solution, or are you, like me, ignoring the problem and hoping it will magically resolve itself?
Yeah, I feel you about the storage space thing, definitely. I need a giant cupboard to put most of them in. I think I've got a rotating display that is what I envision having in a few years' time, where I've got like a shelf, or maybe it's slightly diorama, and I kind of bring out certain models just to look at them and sort of take pleasure in them. But I think, don't feel bad about selling stuff off if you're really not going to look at them anymore. Like, if you genuinely, honestly think to yourself, oh, am I really going to, play with these Sylvaneth or look at these Sylvaneth or whatever, then yeah, sure, sell them. Someone else can use them.
Yeah, selling off painted models makes me a bit sad. I kind of get that.
I know what you mean.
Like, I think, I'm kind of, maybe I'm lucky because I do have a little bit of storage space. Like, I'm thinking of getting another kind of carry case for things to live in, because it does make a big difference.
Yeah.
I can see stuff going into storage, possibly, for a while. Partly because I kind of hope that, I'll continue to get mileage out of them, either playing or just sort of enjoying the collection until I can, not that I have plans in this regard, but give them to my kids or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's an investment in my time.
Yeah.
That would be the kind of blue sky thought on it. Ultimately, I think if my life changed substantially, I wouldn't be totally opposed to selling them on, but I'd probably be more inclined to put them on semi-permanent loan.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. Give it to someone who's interested in the hobby or just wants to try it on your arm
to a friend or someone who's just getting into the hobby or something like that, so that I kind of knew where they were.
Yeah. And making someone happy somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not, I don't know, it's not like a box full of Xbox 360 games. I'm thinking about things that are literally in this room that I just haven't walked down to CEX yet. I have no attachment to that, even though it represents a big time in my life and a big lot of time, because I didn't put any of myself into that. And that, whereas I don't know, my Zeech collection, for example, I will probably stick around.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it's not, I mean, also maybe I don't anticipate getting to the point where I have, I'll put it this way, I can see myself stopping collecting things, but keeping the things I do have and getting them out every now and then for a game of Warhammer.
Yeah.
Right? I don't see myself buying armies forever. I'll put it that way. But I say that now.
We will see.
Yeah.
And then they already start with.
Yeah, I mean, a couple more armies, but I don't see it. I suppose that's the way I'd put it, is I don't see it as an exponential miniatures acquisition curve.
Yeah.
I think it's more that you just stop collecting at some point and keep the stuff you've got, or change the rate of it.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Drew, who writes, "Hi, Chris's suit and Tom Hammer." That's pretty good.
Yeah.
A good attempt. Recently, I built up a Bane sword from the Imperial Guard Super Heavy kit. The range of different vehicles which the kit makes, along with the nice little hobby details, superfluous toolboxes, crank handles, etc., all made me think that whilst I might have other favourite models, this might be my favourite kit. Based on scale of final model / times age / times build options times modelling details times etc. Do you have a kit that particularly stands out for you? Alternatively, as a less nerdy definition, if you could only build one kit for the rest of your hobby life, which kit would it be? Thanks for podding. Drew. That is an interesting question.
Yeah, it's tricky, and it's hard. It's tricky with AOS in particular because you don't tend to get the 40k style level of build options for most units.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense for them to be, modular in the way that, yeah. I think, so yeah, build one kit for the rest of your life is an interesting one because
I can only think of ones I wouldn't.
Yeah, me too.
I'm just thinking of the worst ones. God, I love the Vanguard Paladors, but that kit is so awful. It's an amazing kit, technically. I mean, the results are great, but it's horrible to build. It takes ages.
It might be a bit of a cop-out, but, I really do love that 40k terrain stuff. I feel like if I had to build one thing for the rest of my life, I would just build
like gradually build a hive
City.
world by myself.
Yeah, that would
like,
be
because I love the sense of place. You know what I mean? Like if I could literally just sit there expanding this place and making it into a place, that would probably mean more to me than like a infinitely expanding crowd of Space Marines.
Yes. Yeah.
Although there are things that like I really would love to do, like as a hobby end goal, and maybe completely contrary to the thing I just said about storage, I'd love to do like the kind of doing a Space Marine chapter one day. Like I just like I love the sense of scale that has, and just being able to look at it and be like, look at this.
Yeah.
Which is all you do with it. You never play with it. It'd just be like, look at this.
But imagine how good it would be to look at.
Yeah. But those particular kits, you know, I don't know specifically. Yeah, like I don't like particularly enjoy the Necron kits that I've been doing recently. The New Thousand Suns kits are really good, but actually the detail's quite specific. It's like you get loads of good options.
Yeah.
But I imagine if you've done like maybe 3 boxes of Rupert Marines, you've kind of probably seen everything you can do with that.
I wonder what the New York vehicle kits are going to be like, because they could be really, really fun to kind of customize and change for the October.
I'll tell you what, I would probably do Knights Forever.
Oh yeah,
or
shout,
even Adeptus Titanicus Titans.
Yeah,
because I love a big robot me, and I will just do dire armor bases and different poses and just end up with this endless household. You know what I mean?
That's a good shout.
Yeah. I haven't actually. I mean, I'm saying that having never done one myself, but I know what's on the sprue, so it's sort of what would be fun to keep doing, I guess.
I watched Duncan's video, Warhammer TV painting one of the knights, one of the Titans in fact, and you get the kind of underskeleton that you assemble first and paint, and then you layer on the armor bit by bit.
Yeah,
and that looks like a really satisfying build.
Yeah, I think as not primarily 40k players, it's actually surprisingly hard to answer that question.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
Yeah,
in and of itself,
it's a big difference, isn't it, between the two ranges?
Yes, cool. He also mentions the hashtag Age of Sigmar, which is the thing that our community is doing in order to get armies ready for our event in November, which we'll talk about in a bit. Yeah, so just a little reminder that, I know what I'm talking about, a little reminder that that's happening, and if people want to take part, then everyone's welcome. Next question comes from Mark, who writes in a very small font that I'm going to have to lean in to see. Hello, strange bird and a we rate dog 7 out of 10 golden retriever. That is a very specific
That's
read
a deep cut, but very accurate.
Golden retriever.
I like golden retrievers.
I'd do more like a collie.
I love golden retrievers.
That's true. Didn't you have a lab?
No, we, our family had 2 or 3 golden retrievers.
Oh, right.
In a rotation. One in, one out.
Oh, they're good dogs, Tam. If Primarchs had a His Dark Materials demon, which ones would they have?
Oh, that's a good question.
That is a good question. I can see Jagatai Khan with an eagle swooping alongside his motorbike, Sanguinius with the bird of paradise, and Lorgar with a snake. Yours familiarly a sloth, and that's from Chronotherm. We don't have to do all the Primarchs, because I suspect we're going to have some more Primarch questions buried in this huge pile, but so I think Gilliman would have a golden retriever.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
I like
loyal, dependable,
gold. Yeah. Let's think. I think the lion is probably a cat person, partly because of lion, but also, yeah. I think Limon Russ probably answers itself, to be honest, because he has 2 of them.
Yes, that's true.
And they are wolves. I think, let's think. Alfarius gets a chameleon. I mean, they're simple as a snake, right? It's the Hydra, but, you know.
What do you think?
Oh no, it would be like one of those, like, freaky insects that pretends to be a leaf.
Yes. What, the stick insects?
Yeah, the ones that look exactly like a leaf. It's weird. I think they're called leaf bugs.
Yeah, I know the ones you mean.
Yeah.
I like the idea of them having demons that can sort of live inside their armour, their massive armour, just have a little house in there, just a little sort of shed inside the Primarch armour, and then just pop out to give you advice, like, shoot that thing, and don't go over there, look out for that demon. I
think Horus would be a beautiful horse.
Right.
Like a gorgeous...
He'd just kill any horse he sat on, though, wouldn't he?
He would. He doesn't have to sit on it. It's his demon.
Stands next to him.
It's his, it's his, like, it's his something about his soul, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's his, I think it's a horse. And that's not just because it sounds like Horus.
Horus and his
the
horse.
Heresy.
I mean, just for that alone, it's correct.
Yeah. Let's think.
The Emperor's demon is just like, all the Primarchs are just his demons, I suppose,
That's
aren't they?
true, yeah. Who else we got? Who are we missing? Rogel Dawn. What is an animal that will defend you, but is probably a little bit masochistic? Like a bee. Very defensive of the hive.
Yes.
But kills itself when it attacks. Yeah, he's a bumblebee.
He's a bumblebee.
It's a bumblebee. And they're yellow and black.
Yeah. And it
nailed it.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
I'm trying to get around Magnus, which I think maybe like a minor bird or something.
I imagine just a shifting creature that is, one moment a unicorn and the next moment an eagle that sort of, a permanent state of change.
I mean, the Thousand Sons have tutelary spirits that follow them around. Maybe a parrot. There's the other answer.
Something really colourful. Maybe a parrot. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Heresy parrot. Let's think.
It could be a beautiful rainbow-coloured cocoon that whispers to him.
Yeah.
And the thing inside is always in a state of change.
Angron would have one of those, horn beetles that can't stop suplexing other beetles.
Or those honey badgers, famously angry. Yeah. Honey badger. Is that
honey badger, yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, it is.
Good.
Yeah, you've remembered that right.
It's the really aggressive thing that just kills.
Yeah, eats things, yeah.
Eats snakes that, even as they're being bitten by the snake, they're just eating it.
Yeah.
Very angry about the whole thing. Angron about the whole thing.
Angry Ron. Ferrus Manus and Petarabo are kind of different ones because they're kind of robo-men, so...
They'd build their own demons. It'll be a Roomba.
Conrad Kerr is definitely a bat.
Ferrus Manus has a Roomba. That's his...
It's a Roomba.
It's a Roomba that talks to him. Yeah. He asks it advice. It just goes...
Yeah. And Petarabos is just an Alexa. Let's think. No, I think... So Conrad Kerr is obviously a bat because he's basically Batman.
Yeah.
Corvus Corax is obviously a crow because his name is Crow.
Yeah. Not subtle, the Prime Monks, are they?
No.
That's what I like about them.
Good, I think that answers that one. We probably missed someone, but, we've got a lot of questions. Next, Kingsley writes, Dear Chris and Tom, the Lord Tzeentch gazes upon you and decides to change you into one of the other races of the Age of Sigmar. What form does this blessing take?
So we could become any...
Yeah, you become one of the factions or one of the peoples of the mortal realms.
Give me a bit of death, the immortality of death.
So you become a skeleton.
A skeleton or a banshee, whatever happens. I'd be a banshee.
I can see you as a skeleton.
I'd be a very happy skeleton.
Yeah.
Really scared, just fucking loving it.
Yeah.
Loving.
Dead and loving it.
Loving bim bones.
Yeah. I think I would be, maybe a Caradron?
Yeah. I can imagine that actually.
Yeah.
But I think, you'd be a kind of socialist Caradron.
Exactly.
I don't think you go with full libertarian.
No, that's the thing that doesn't appeal to me about it. Yeah, whatever. Exactly. So maybe not. I was thinking it'd probably be dwarves. Let's think. Not Sylvaneth. I might be too sort of inconsistent in my beliefs for that. Because they're very mono kind of focused on stuff. I think I'm not edgy enough for Idoneth. I don't think anyone is really.
No.
Beastmen are a bit scary, really, at the end of the day. Actually, it might be Zangor. Because, it's just a beastman that can read. That's at the end of the day, right?
Aren't we all?
Exactly. Yeah. Fuck, man.
Man, dude.
Yeah. Jesus.
Incredible. Sip of this tea.
Next, Jams writes, Hi, Chris and Tom. I'm in awe of Tom managing to keep his laser focus on his Stormcast and get to the end of his shame pile. Chris seems real good at keeping to his core stuff too. My own shame pile is a large and scattershot collection of things I thought were cool, but now I've no real need for. How have you managed to stop that happening to your own shame piles? And do you have any tips for being avoided by being distracted by hot new stuff? Bye, Jams. Well, my answer is shame. Putting the shame back in shame pile.
Yeah, build a new one. Once you finish your first one, you got to get a new one.
No, but seriously, I think we've described it a few times in this pod, that sort of I want to buy this feeling. It's a thing, and it's actually okay to indulge that thing sometimes.
Yeah.
But, I think sometimes just, for me, it's like with Lord of the Rings at the moment, I know it's a feeling I have, but I kind of like to try and sit on those feelings for 2 weeks.
Yeah, just see. You don't know.
And then see if I still like it, you know?
maybe that's a technique. Like, don't get anything on release day. Don't pre-order anything. Get everything 2 weeks later.
Just kind of, chill on it. I went through a phase of really looking into buying some Warmaster off eBay. And I had that size thing and I ended up sort of just making a kit out of foam board and playing with it. And that's a very weird rule system. Played it against Chip and it was quite strange. So I'm kind of glad I didn't spend loads of money doing that now.
Yeah, like I was really tempted by Adneth. I bought the Adneth book and I still got it. But then I realised that, like, oh well, it'll probably be in big Battle Force boxes at the end of the year for the Christmas roundup, because it tends to happen with factions that get released at that point in the year.
That's true.
And then I also realised I really want to finish Tzeentch, and also Dark Earth might be coming, so I'm just going to kind of, like, sit on that one. I may have mentioned this as an answer to this question before, but, like, the books are a good way of kind of, like, getting your fill of something.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Kind of.
And they're really nice just to pick up, even once you've kind of read them. The photography is beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, you're enjoying reading it, and, you know, maybe maybe you qualify it as a waste if you never play using the rule section of the book, but honestly, I genuinely think that, like, reading through rule sections and imagining things you might build is legitimate value. It's
definitely.
like, just like window shopping is legitimate value, and a big part of the hobby, to be honest.
Yeah, just looking at the colour schemes in the heavy metal and thinking about what you might do with the models and your own theme. Like, it's just good brain fuel, isn't it?
It's like, I mean, legitimately, the app or the army builder on the website, yes, it's technically there to help you build armies for the game you play, but what it's really there for is you're procrastinating and you have fun building an army you don't own for like 20 minutes, and then you close it and never think about it again.
Yeah, definitely.
Like that, really, that is what it's a game, basically. Into itself.
It's nice.
Yeah. I think there's some advice buried in there somewhere. Next question comes from Mitchell Oxbait on Discord, who writes, "Dear Chris Tech and Tom Spider," little Necron themed on there. I've recently gotten back into X-Wing through the excellent Heroes of the Aturi cluster co-op campaign. My friends and I are not very competitive, so this is the perfect way to enjoy the game, and it still manages to produce interesting stories, especially that time one of the AI TIE fighters broke formation, flew into the same asteroid 4 times and exploded without firing a shot at it, just like in the movies. Do you think that AOS or 40k could benefit from some kind of co-op way to play? Thanks for the pod, and thanks to the Discord community for being so helpful and friendly. It's from Mitchell.
Love this idea. I really love this idea that you'd have AI controlled hordes and you play as maybe like a co-op kill team trying to take them out. I guess the closest thing is stuff like Silver Tower, isn't it?
Well, I was going to mention that. Like, so Heroes of the Aturi cluster, if you haven't heard of it, is a fan-made expansion for X-Wing.
Right.
So, which adds kind of a rudimentary AI system, and sort of progression, so you kind of role-playing campaign.
Oh, cool.
It's cool. It's really cool.
That's excellent.
But yeah, Silver Tower is the closest precedent for that. And then a bit of news we forgot to mention, which is Warhammer Quest Blackstone Fortress, which is 40k Silver Tower, basically, which is on its way, maybe this year.
Awesome.
Which is super exciting to me.
Yeah, that's right.
In fact, like, Warhammer Quest kind of lost me when Shadows over Hammerhall came out and required a GM.
Yeah.
Because, you know, getting Silver Tower and therefore getting back into Warhammer for me was because I wanted a dungeon crawler that I could just play with my friends and not have to have one person separate.
And if you're going to have a GM, you might as well do some pen and paper role playing, right? Because there are better systems out there that will facilitate, you know.
Yeah, totally. So I think this kind of does exist, although I agree with you that, like, an army-wide AI system would be really interesting.
Man, that would be interesting to write, actually.
Question. Yeah. Our next question comes from Quinn. Not Primarchs this time, but which video game company would each Space Marine Legion be?
Crossing the streams.
Crossing the streams slightly. Maybe we don't have to do all of them. It's kind of an interesting one because it's actually not like a perfect match, because video game companies tend not to be like mono-focused in the same way that
they tend not to serve a slightly fascistic god emperor either. So
that's true.
It's difficult to
capitalism.
So maybe Blizzard for the Ultramarines.
Yeah, that's a good try. Very dependable. Basically do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Big book of rules that they don't sway from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good shout. Let's think. Dark Angels, probably Valve.
Yeah, I was trying to find Valve.
Maybe a Traitor Legion. Full of secrets. Secretly full of cliques.
Privately owned.
Privately owned. Yes. Let's think. I feel like there's a lot of kind of like quite tragic stories in the games industry, but none of them specifically map onto the tragedies of the Horus Heresy, a real thing that happened.
Yeah, I was about to make a Riot Games joke that I won't make.
Right, yeah. The problem is that, like, a lot of the bad things that happen to game companies were genuinely bad, and people's livelihoods are at stake, so it's kind of not funny.
It's true.
Which is a problem, because that's the purpose of this bit. We just need to finish out. We've got 2. Rule of Comedy, we need a third one. So, part of me wants to say Space Wolves and CD Projekt Red.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason. But I don't know why.
I mean, a CD Projekt Red off the freaking chain.
They probably are.
Maybe so.
Devoted fans. I'm angry at them for what they did to BioWare, who in this analogy are the Thousand Sons.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Where the Thousand Sons...
co-opted by
the forces of darkness.
Yeah, that fits very well. Good. Yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah, good. All right. Quinn did send us a second Primark question as well, which is, which character from Mamma Mia 2 Here We Go Again would each Primark be?
See, I haven't watched it.
It's very good.
I've heard it's very good.
Cher is the Emperor. It totally
she
works.
Should be anyway.
She totally is.
Fantastic.
And that is actually my dream casting for the Emperor. Long black hair.
Yeah.
I mean...
She's not... I really like Cher.
I love Cher.
And I don't really like the Emperor very much. I think she's too likeable.
Well, but she does austere, most powerful person in this room.
Kind of true,
like,
actually,
I find it hard to visualize. You know that thing that people get in all the descriptions of the Emperor where it's like, you know, just being around him there's some magnetic force that sends even Primarchs, you know, kind of kneeling in awe. I think that is the impact that Cher has on a room.
Yeah, I can see that.
And you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to visualize unless I think about
just
that.
Raw charisma.
I don't necessarily want to make this the second time in our podcast history that I've spoken about the movie Burlesque. But no, very good in Mamma Mia 2. Here we go again. I think, it's hard to necessarily map the other characters on because without spoilers for Mamma Mia 2, Here we go again. So maybe I just stick with that.
Nice.
Because, like, I guess you could say, also I can't remember the name of any of the dads. It's just, it's just the Pierce Brosnan dad, the Skarsgård dad, and the Firth dad. You know, which don't necessarily in themselves even map onto the characters of the Horus Heresy, a real thing that happened. But I will go with Cher as the Emperor.
Nice.
Next question comes from Jason, who writes, "Hi, Star Tom Drake and Chris Zan Chris Gore. Thoroughly enjoyed your fantastic Age of Sigmar 2nd edition time travelling battle report lore extravaganza special. Thanks very much. I believe this will be my first ever question from questions. I've been a huge fan of the Crate and Crowbar and have listened religiously ever since the first episode, back when Ross Atherton was still leading the pod, before the name change. You mean the PC Gamer podcast, but yeah, fine.
There's a continuum there.
And before Marsh was lost to the cold Nordic dark. Good shout out, not branding the pod's rebirth, something I'm not going to say out loud. I honestly think Minis Monthly is the best context you've come up with yet. I love how energized and excited you both are, but everything tabletop. It's both hilarious and infectious. I realised that I've basically just read a good minute of praise.
I was starting to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, me too.
I was wondering whether to mention it.
Yes. But don't worry, we're getting to the question now. Having never gotten into playing Warhammer or any tabletop war games, being a huge fan of the Warhammer universes and pen and paper RPGs, the bit of your AOS 2nd edition special I most enjoyed was discussing around the exciting prospect of an AOS pen and paper system. How likely do you think it is that Games Workshop would release something formally to facilitate pen and paper role-playing and storytelling within the AOS setting? I know they've explored the format in the past with things like Rogue Trader. What would each of you want from such a release? And would you want to see a system along of D&D's very deep structured rule set, or something looser and more fluid like Numenera? If such a brilliant thing ever does come to exist and you do end up running a campaign in the AOS setting, please could you record your sessions and publish them as a minis bonus pod? And Jason goes on a little bit further, but it's mostly more praise, and I don't want to make us more uncomfortable, so I'm not going to read it. But he says, keep up the sweet tiny people paint jobs and hot lord takes, Jason. He also goes on to say, and this was in late August, that it was soon to be his birthday, his 30th birthday, and if we hadn't recorded the podcast yet, which spoilers, we hadn't, could we also say happy birthday, Jason? So I appreciate it. Now it has been several weeks since your birthday, Jason, but happy birthday, Jason.
Happy birthday, Jason.
You've turned 30, the year at which you start getting into Warhammer.
Yeah.
Again.
Love it. I love being 30.
Warhammer.
30s.
Here we go again. So
to the question, I think they have confirmed an AOS.
I think so as well. I think I don't think GW are doing it. I think someone else is.
No, they rarely do. It's usually some
it's a third party's doing it. I like the idea of kind of a light touch apocalypse world style vehicle for AOS, which isn't like a terribly systemic game anyway in terms of what's actually happening with people hitting each other. It'd be interesting to see how the realms work as a setting for. Obviously, you've got like the planes in D&D, so there are versions of this.
There's Planescape as well.
Yeah,
I mean, if anything, AOS is more in debt to those tabletop role-playing games than we maybe often talk about.
I can imagine it working now. The factions are more sketched out, but I still have struggled to imagine some of the factions actually interacting with one another, especially for stuff like the Sylvaneth. Like, how would you have like a Sylvaneth hero alongside a Stormcast, alongside someone else?
I think it's fine.
Yeah,
honestly,
make it work, really.
I think it would also support a more sort of rulesy kind of dungeon crawly game just because of the nature of the setting. But I do like the idea of something a little lighter touch. The new Cypher system would be a good fit for it. Genesis system, which Fantasy Flight do, would also be a good fit for it. I think kind of interesting outcomes to stuff. I think it's got the kind of internal. It now has the kind of internal logic of the world to support a couple of different things.
Yeah,
like if the players all understand the logic of the world, then you could run with a looser system, and it'd still feel like it had some crunchiness to it. Which is really nice. I'd love to do it. And if ever did happen, I would totally record it.
Yeah.
That'd be a really fun thing to do.
That'd be awesome.
And do more stupid voices, which is 90% of GMing, apparently. Yeah, cool. And once again, happy birthday, Jason. Next question comes from Tom Dines on Discord, who writes, "Forgive me, Podfathers, for I have sinned. I have many times painted with paint straight from the pot. I just did it now. I know it's wrong, but sometimes it's really easy and I just give in to sloth. I promise to try thin coats next time. Help me feel less guilty. What's your hobby confession?"
Ooh. Welcome to Crate and Crowbar Nights. the real darkness.
PC Gamer Nights 2. Miniatures Nights. Here we go again. My hobby confession is I secretly do not really give a tremendous shit about gaps or mold lines.
Good point, that one. It's the most tedious bit for me. And I'm really bad at it. I often just end up scraping too hard and just out of irritation, really.
Yeah.
Get off my model. Mold lines. I've got like the GW scraping tool, and that's, I just give it a cursory scrape and that's it, really.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Mine is just, there are just bits that aren't painted on my models, and I'll never tell you where they are, but I know they're there.
Is it underneath the groin area?
Often underneath the cape in the groin area.
Yeah.
There's no paint in there.
Yeah, I've started to learn that that's okay, actually.
It's fine, yeah.
It's like I've started to leave bits that don't need to be like twice highlighted. And it's saved me a lot of time.
It does save a lot of time.
Yeah, I've got a lot of like back half of loincloths on Blood Warriors that you're never going to see.
Yeah, all that stuff.
And like honestly, if someone at an event picked up my models and were determinedly staring up between their legs, I'd be both delighted that work was finally paying off, a bit weirded out.
A little bit odd, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
But no, mold lines is definitely mine, because I really don't care. And like, it's like, I don't even think they look that bad, which is probably the bigger confession. It's not that I don't do it, it's just that I don't care looking at them. It's like, yeah, that's fine.
I get annoyed by,
some of them are really bad. Like, obviously we're not talking about Finecast.
Yeah,
Finecast. Gaps are worse.
Gaps, like, in the core set, some of the Stormcast, the gaps are right down the middle of the shoulder pads, and that's just like a glaring place for them to be. And then, like, normally the gaps like further down the model, but if they're just that obvious, it's really annoying. It's worth spending time sorting it out.
Our next question comes from Tom Hatfield, our friend, former housemate.
Hello, Tom.
He sent us two questions. This is the one that I'm going to have to do some more describing. He's done a political compass for Warhammer Age of Sigmar characters, and it's quite small, and so you're going to have to enjoy the podcast experience of me reading this off the screen. I'll put it in the show notes. But yes, so the vertical axis of this compass is from jock to nerd. With Gorka Morka at the pinnacle of jock and Zinch at the pinnacle of nerd. The other axis running across this is from preppy to goth, with no specific person picked for preppy, but Malerian Malekith picked for goth. He identifies Khorne as slightly all the way jock, but slightly to the right towards goth.
Yeah, okay, I can see that.
In the centre of the triangle, interestingly, is Nurgle, who exists at the exact centre between jock, nerd, goth, and preppy. Slightly to the right, so slightly
as centrist as the lamentable centrist Nurgle. Slightly to the right towards Goth is Marathi. But slightly to the left towards Preppy is Alariel. So the two elven goddesses sitting to either side of Nurgle.
They're mirrors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's neat. Grungni, the Slayer god, is to the left of Jock, but high up in Jock towards Preppy. Slanesh further towards Preppy, but even on the Jock nerd axis. Whereas what I believe might be the high elves of all the way over to Preppy, for example, but a bit closer to nerdy. Stormcast sit evenly in the center of the Jock prep quadrant.
Yeah, I was literally just thinking about where I'd put Sigmar himself, and it would be fairly far into that quadrant.
And then Nagash is all the way to the bottom right, alone in the Goth nerd.
The nerd god, that's very...
This is a very
astute.
Good chart. Tom sent this with no other content and just the word discuss. We've described, and now we have to do the other D.
Nagash is a nerd, isn't he?
He is, yeah. I think this is a good chart. I'm trying to think where else we'd put other characters. I meant Grimnir other when I said Grungni. If I was to say Grungni the Smith God, then I think Grungni ends up nerd prep, which is another example of that, but a little bit closer to nerd and a bit closer to goth. I think the Ideneth are somewhere in the goth nerd.
Yeah,
quadrant.
they'll be down towards the bottom right there. Maybe right in the middle of that quadrant somewhere.
I think Slaves to Darkness run the entire goth gamut. Sorry, the entire Jock gamut.
Yeah.
Depending on specific god allegiances.
Where Caradron sit? Close to the middle.
Yeah, centrist nerds.
Centrist nerds, Caradron overlords.
Yes, exactly. Silicon Valley
yeah.
is where they sit.
There you go, yeah.
Hyper-capitalist centrist nerds.
There they are, right now.
Let's think. What other factions in Age of Sigmar are there that we would have to align? Like, most of the sort of green, like, almost the entire Destruction faction just sits at the top of Jock Centrist, I think.
Yeah, Jock Centrist.
Although, maybe you could argue that the sort of Frost Lords, so the what they're called, the Beastcore Raiders, sit slightly on the goth side of that, because they're pursued by an endless winter they can never shake, which could be an Evanescence song. So,
really true, I agree with that.
So that's, that maybe pushes them in that direction slightly, which actually pushes them a little bit closer to Khorne, but maybe not in the way that we'd be thinking.
You could have like the Swift Orc agents and the High Elves very much in the prep nerd extreme down there. The Wanderers would be a bit more goth. Probably.
Yeah, they are more goth.
So they'd be further to the right there.
Yeah, because they did the unforgivable crime of fleeing.
Yeah.
And they have to pay for it by wandering the realms alone forever.
Eternally
they are more
exiled.
like sort of like folk metal, really, but
so not quite as far across to goth, but, on that axis, on the way there.
That spectrum, yeah. Let's think.
Are there any Jock goths? That's hard to place.
Well, Jock, do you mean much further over in that corner?
Much further, yeah, I mean, Khorne is in the corner there, but, there could be someone further.
No one puts Khorne in the corner.
That's a hard quadrant to fill, I think.
It is, yeah. I suppose, sort of, White Kings, like Death Rattle, because if you get into, so Nighthaunt are fully over goth nerds, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, they're too close to the gash, aren't they?
But Death Rattle might be a bit closer to the full goth Jock quadrant.
Maybe vampires.
Morghasts.
Just really beefy.
Yeah,
beefy skeletons.
The beefiest skeleton.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, vampires are basically all the way over the centrist goth. Because they are nerds as well.
And nerds as well, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially Manfred.
Yeah, exactly. You could put Manfred where Malingarian is on this chart, I think. Actually, no, maybe Manfred is the Jock goth.
He's kind of scheming and a bit pathetic, though.
But he's also a fighter,
He's a good fighter. All vampires are good
Whereas, you could put Archon the Black basically exactly where...
Maybe Neferata goes up there somewhere.
Possibly, yeah, but she's also very schemy. They're all very schemy.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean...
Oh, no, what's the other one? The other one would fit. What's his name? Not Arcan. Arcan's
the biggest nerd.
Is he the
Arcan's the
he's the spellcaster, isn't he?
He's Nagash's prefect.
Yeah, that's true. Is he preppy?
He might be.
He's a preppy vampire.
He's
the only one.
He's a skeleton. If he's a preppy, he might be a preppy goth, which breaks this chart.
Yeah, we broke your chart, Tom. Sorry.
But he's also like the little Mortark that sits behind. Like, if it was a Beastie Boys rap video, all he would do is repeat what Nagash said.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm glad we had this conversation.
Yeah, I
thank
think
you, Tom Hatfield, for furnishing us with it and giving me an extra job in the show notes. Tom sent a separate question, which was, since Kill Team is about to or has just released last month, I thought I'd ask a Kill Team flavour question. You're putting together a 5-person Deathwatch Kill Team. Which chapter would you have each Marine be from? You can pick any chapter, not just the original 18. So let's hear some of your favourite successor chapters. Because this sounds like hard work, I was just going to go with favourite successor chapters.
I don't know. The Crimson Fists aren't a successor chapter.
Yes, they are. They're a successor chapter of the...
100% them.
Yeah. Black Templars for me.
Nice.
So we got 2 Imperial Fist successor chapters on the go there.
Yeah.
Maybe the Green Raven Guard, whose name I've forgotten. It might just be like the Green Ravens. Raven Friends. I forgot what they're called.
Salamanders? They're not a successor chapter.
No, they're first founding chapter.
No. OG Salamanders.
Yeah. Carcharodons, Space Sharks. That'd be quite good. Blah, 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 blah. Blood Ravens. Favourite Thousand Sons successor chapter.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. I
love Crimson Fists.
Yeah, I know you do.
I wish I had some Crimson Fists, Chris.
But you did Inner Hands.
I know. Why did I do that? Curse Ferrus and his Roomba.
Exactly. Our final question comes from Chimp.
Oh, Chimp.
Who has sent us a photo. It opens with a photo of Elon Musk smoking a fatty in a yet another wacky adventure.
I love how obsessed the internet is with
of real life's most wayward Caradron Overlord.
What army would Elon Musk collect?
It would be Caradron Overlords, right? But he's invented tunnels, so it's just regular dwarves.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Revolutionary guy. Revolutionary idea for dwarves. Yeah. I've invented the metro. Well done.
Almighty.
Well done.
Someone once tweeted that Nagash is basically the Emperor, but with a better plan and people management skills. Don't at me. And while I think we can all agree that this is true, in the grand tradition of pointlessly comparing universes, I'd like to go deeper. Both characters were once humans from another age, who later became gods through the use of magic or sufficiently advanced technology. They both require the sacrifice of millions of souls, but in order to power up and fight their major antagonists, the Chaos Gods. Nagash and the Emperor are both Volcel, but are obsessed with creating children with part of their own power. The Mortarks are a clear AOS equivalent of the Primarchs, Mort, Death, Prim, showing disapproval of anything improper, Arc, a vertical curved structure. In that they're clearly the most interesting characters in each setting, the most imbued with personality, getting ever more large, improbably wobbly models. The difference being that the Primarchs are all dudes, but the revealed Mortarks so far have an equal representation of men and women. Appendix A, Manfred and Arcan, men, Neferata and Lady Olinda, women. In conclusion, Sigmar should stop being so mean to Nagash. Thanks for listening. There isn't a question, Chimp. And then a photo of Elon Musk breathing out. Rip Mortark of Shadow, Vlad von Casting. So this isn't a question, it's just a statement from our death collecting friend.
Yeah.
But a good series of statements.
Yeah.
I am, however, compelled by the counter argument, or maybe even... No, hang on. So if Nagash is
the
Emperor, then Sigmar is a Catan.
Right.
And the Stormcaster Necrons. And put it this way, right? Your race is doomed. You're on the edge of destruction by the Chaos Gods.
Yeah.
What do?
Become metal.
Yeah. And put your souls into metal bodies.
Yeah.
Is that a good idea?
No.
What do you do when you realise it's a bad idea? Close the doors and go to sleep.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
compelling, actually. Yeah, it's compelling.
What happens when you wake up? Set fire to everything.
Yeah. The Stormcaster, they don't really set fire to everything. Some of them do.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of them do. And some of them go wrong, like Necrons.
Yeah. And they just start collecting hats.
Yeah.
And that's it.
So is Nagash the good guy?
No.
He's just...
No, because I'm going to tell you why, Tom. Because he's an 80-foot skeleton.
Am I the bad guy?
Exactly.
He's brilliant. Nagash is probably my favourite character in Warhammer, maybe. Maybe.
He has a good, the bit at the very beginning of Soul War where he's basically trying to steer the Black Pyramid while Skaven screw it up from the inside. And literally, like 3 of the Chaos Gods are laughing at him through the windows. And literally laughing at him through the windows of the... Really? It's actually one of the only times you see them all described as well. So like,
that's cool.
Tzeentch in like an avian form, like it's what it is supposed to be, that he's seeing this kind of spectral depiction of loads of reality through shattered planes of shade glass, but it sounds like he's in a cockpit with the windows, and Tzeentch is like sitting on the roof laughing at him, and Khorne is like hammering on the window, and Nurgle's like greasing up his windscreen as basically, as far as I can tell, Nagash kind of spins off into the sky like Dr. Robotnik at the end of an episode of a Sonic cartoon, or Team Rocket. Cause, this is maybe the argument against Nagash being the best character is he is the area man that can't stop fucking up.
Yeah, but I find that, I like that about him a lot.
Yeah, it is I enjoy his very relatable. Yeah.
Is the combination of, a huge amount of self-regard and, just being very bad at things.
It's almost vicarious, like, it's a clever bit of writing in a way, because it's almost embarrassing, because he's so convinced that he's a god.
Yeah.
And some rats got into his stupid pyramid, and it's spinning out of control and fucking everything up, and it's really visible. And he really has shat the bed in public.
It's in front of everyone.
And also the real gods are laughing at him.
Yeah.
Like, and it is the bigger kids. Like, he sees himself as this inevitable ultra god of a kind of primal force, which is basically just a chaos god, but he's not.
No. He's not got it. He doesn't have it.
Yeah, he doesn't have it. And
he'll never have it.
He's trying to do a BMX trick, and he's just fucking beefed it hard into like the side of the skate park.
Yeah.
And all of the big kids are there, and they can all see. And that's powerfully relatable.
He's Tetsuo, isn't he?
Yeah. Yes, he is.
That's the wronged, deeply bittered.
Wait, does that make Canada Sigmar?
Canada's a bit too rogue to be Sigmar, though. He's kind of a scoundrel.
Yeah.
But, actually at the end of Akira, that's the birth of a chaos god, basically.
Yes, it is.
It is.
That's like Nagash getting what he wants.
Getting what he wants and going full Nurgle, basically.
I think Sigmar was a barbarian king. I think he can
I suppose so. Yeah. Maybe he is like Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. We can map anything onto Warhammer. Challenge us
via email. Unifying theory of all things.
All media.
Which one of these people is Nagash? Good. That is... all of the questions we have. We've just solved
Warhammer, everybody.
We've solved Warhammer, everyone.
Good job.
If you'd like to send us a question for a future email... If you'd like to send us a question for a future episode, you can email us at questions... Oh, fuck. Now I've stacked it. Now I'm Nagash trying to do this outro. If you want to email us for a future episode of this podcast, you can email us at miniatures@crateandcrowbar.com. You can also tweet us at minismonthly, which is a good way of getting your thoughts and feelings to us. We do, of course, have our first event coming up in Cardiff in November, the Firestorm Games, on the 17th and 18th. We're going to have loads of open play, basically, so you can play whatever you like, bring and play whatever you like with our community, which is going to be rad. We're going to do a big Age of Sigmar kind of campaign game involving everybody, which is going to be really exciting.
Rad. So good.
You get to see our models in real life. Imagine.
Don't look up the crotch bits on
Please don't. Oh, look at mine. God, people are going to do that now.
Yeah, definitely.
Shit. But yes, and so that's going to happen, and we're going to have some kind of social in the evening. We're a bit on the fence about whether we're going to do a live pod. We may well record something there, but whether or not we actually do a pod is a different matter, because it's logistically quite complicated, and we don't want to eat into people's playtime too much.
Sure.
So current thinking is we might end up simply having a social in the evening, which I think is fine. Really. But certainly the escapades of that weekend will be featured on the pod in some way. Yes, that's basically what you need to know for the moment, because I'm still finalising some final details with Firestorm. In addition to obviously your travel and accommodation, it will probably be £5 per day for the days you come down to play. You don't need to pay for both days if you're only down for one, which is good. If you'd like to RSVP a place, please email us at events@crateandcrowbar.com. First come, first served. And note that we have a sort of tentative capacity of 40 people, and we are approaching that, which is amazing news, because this is based on the survey we did. But it does mean that if you haven't emailed us yet and you do want to come, it's a good idea to get that done ASAP, basically, because when we're ready to start kind of like finalizing the exact, there won't be tickets necessarily, but, who's coming. We'll basically go in order received of emails. And there will likely be a reserves list as well. So it is worth emailing us as people maybe can't make it or whatever. So yeah, so that's happening. That's super exciting. That's basically it. Tom, if people would like to find more of your miniatures stuff, how can they do that?
Well, that will be on Instagram. That's where I post that thing. And I'm at Ludo Paints Minis, which is LUDO Paints Minis.
Lovely. And my miniatures Instagram is at Exit Warp. That's EXITWARP. And this was the completely on time Miniatures Monthly 18.
We did it.
We did it, eventually.
And we'll do it again. Sooner this time.
Miniatures Monthly 18. Here we go again. Thanks for listening.